It'll go. We are live! Hooray!
Hooray!
So, before we get anything else said, the alter ego of the fabulous Rick Thunder. It's Brian from Belltube. Welcome, as always, my lovely, lovely friend, who I hope to see many times on the channel from here going forward.
I sure
How
hope
is your
so.
day going?
It's going really well. I was productive this morning. I got to do a Patreon call, which was a lot of fun. And I've been doing some work. I've been doing a little bit of reading. Was excited all week long to be able to sit down and chat with you, you know, as one of my BookTube heroes. So that is fantastic. And yeah, I'm having a blast, and I'm really glad that we can make this work today.
Lovely. Well, Tharnell's been waiting here for longer than I've been here.
Oh, Tharnell.
Hello, Tharnell. You're wonderful. And we have Tharnell telling us that Rick Thunder, as most mythology nerds know, was made by the Cyclops Brontes at the height of the Titanomachy. Once stolen by Hermes as a prank, it is said he was fun at parties.
I can't comment on that. Rick is a very hard guy to pin down. When I get him to come make an appearance, you don't know what you're going to get. His contract is long and extensive. He shows up 30 seconds prior to filming. He's literally gone by the time I turn around to thank him. So if Tharnell's right, then that's news to me because I don't know, but clearly Tharnell does.
Okay, I need to know then, what is the weirdest rider in Rick Thunder's contract?
Well, it goes without saying that there must be at all times a case of ready whipped cream available for him.
Okay.
And that I don't know why, but he's got a predilection for it. Apparently, he wants the temperature controls to be set at not only a certain temperature but also a certain humidity. So that takes a little bit. That takes a little bit of time to put together. Of course, there's the typical snacks, veggie trays, all those things. He's never once touched the veggie tray, but it is on his rider. So
that's the check one. That's the one he's making sure you've read the contract.
Well, don't tell him, but I've been using the same one. I just throw it in the freezer when he leaves. And then I just set it out overnight, you know, and it defrosts.
So it looks all really fresh the following morning.
Looks fine. I don't think he watches YouTube, so he'll never see this to know. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's crazy stuff.
We were just talking. Hi, Andrew. We were just talking before we went live about just how much fun those videos are to make and how much it very much keeps you in the heart of our community, because those of us who love you as a bloke that we've spoken to and we've met and we find hugely entertaining, we're the people who watch those ones because we know you and we want to see all the silly and fun things that you're doing. And it absolutely made my day. I love that. Really did.
That's really why I do it, because I know all of us booktubers we all started. I mean, unless you're Daniel Green, you know, who was like the first guy to be doing it or whatever, we all started watching other booktubers and got joy and entertainment, you know, from them. So it's like my way of being able to say, hey, thank you, you know, for another year's worth of entertainment.
Oh, well, we very much appreciate it. So, because that's very clearly a lot of effort.
It is.
So I was wishing Andrew, I hope he feels better. So do I. And I'm glad to hear you on the mend, Andrew. That's great. Because there's nothing more exhausting as a parent than being not at 100% and still having little people who need you, because that's hard work at the best of times. So I'm glad you're on the mend.
Me too.
I don't have anything in terms of a track to stay on today.
Okay.
So we're literally just going to bounce off the walls as we go.
Oh, cool.
Now, a couple of times we've got, we have to come back to that. And you'd think I'd have paid attention, but I didn't. So
it's fine.
We'll just have to re-find our points of connection.
I think we both
because I know they're there.
We are both able speakers. I think we can find things, no doubt.
Oh, I'm sure. Again, because unlike the vast majority of YouTube, who are probably a good 10, 15 years younger than you and I, we are then that only a little bit, slightly older bracket. Just a tiny bit, people, just tiny bit.
Absolutely. And I would like to
a similar experience in a lot of ways.
Yes. I mean, we're not as ancient as John. We're not as ancient as John is, but
I know. But when did he find the fountain of youth? And why hasn't he shared it? I
Uh,
need to know that.
I don't know. I mean,
Because that
he
skin, he's made a bargain with somebody,
see,
is what I'm
women look
saying.
at I think women look at that more because I would have never thought to think about the skin. That's so funny.
He just when he said how old he was, I just about fell out of my chair. I was like, "No way are
Yeah,
you so much closer to 60 than me. No
yeah,
way."
yeah,
Like, what the heck? And then,
yeah. He's,
quite rightly, he said, "He's a
it's
beard
like,
guy. He's inside, like
yeah,
me. Stay out of the
he
sun."
he's been an absolute one of the favorite things that's happened to me, since starting this channel is my friendship with John because I mean, this is a guy that understands that I'm usually the one that's checking in on everybody else. And
Yeah.
John has taken it upon himself to be the one to check in on me. So
Oh,
that is just fantastic. Yeah, he's a
he
dude,
is a
no
lovely
doubt about
man.
it.
He really is. He is an absolutely lovely man. And his joining BookTube has been an absolute gift to all of us, I think. And because, like yourself, he brings something new and interesting. The fact that his whole family kind of
Hmm.
joined as
Yeah.
at the same time, and that's not to discount the spouses of some of our most loved
Hmm.
creators who are clearly hugely supportive. But Jacob and Amy are very much a part of John's channel.
Oh yeah.
So it has a different vibe. So being able to watch the interactions with his family is just one of the most charming things I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
to
it's
have
working.
that
And
relationship with his
it's,
son, how
I'm,
marvelous.
right? I mean, I think it's benefit for like everybody, right? Us as the viewer, them as a
Yeah.
family, just all of it. I think has been a win-win for everybody. So that's very cool.
Okay, well, Evie's working, so we'll catch it on replay. Well, it's a shame because I love to have you in the chat, you know that. So, but we will because
So do
without it,
I. Yeah, Evie's awesome.
she is awesome. And then we're going to whisper because Kay Fox is also at work,
All
watching
right,
very sneakily. So,
that's
hi,
fine.
Kay Fox.
Anything I can
Yeah.
do to encourage people to blow off work to watch this on YouTube, I am there for.
Yeah, it's one of those lovely joys, isn't it? It's like, no, I want to hang out with my peeps.
Right? Exactly.
So, I mean,
Worldwide
this is,
peeps.
oh my God, like you wouldn't know. I live in New Zealand, for Christ's sake. It's a
Yeah.
tiny, tiny country at the bum end of the world. This is not a major hub for fantasy excitement
Yeah.
in books. I mean, it's just not.
What is
The
what
whole
is the size of New Zealand? Like, is it to compare it to like another country or the scope of another country? Just because I have no
In terms
idea.
of size, it's
Yeah,
almost exactly the same size as the UK. So, you'd think a
got it.
lot of people live
Okay,
here. We don't.
yeah.
We
Is it
have
just
a population of 5 million people in
wow,
total.
wow?
Almost 4 million
That's
of them live in Auckland.
wow. That is about
So,
the population of the state that I live in.
yeah, we're
Wow.
pretty spread out, and it's why I joke quite often, but I sort of hope they never disprove it, but it's like a 2 degrees of separation in New Zealand. Forget 6.
Yeah,
There is a very, very strong chance if someone said to me, "Oh, I know so and so from New Zealand," that if I don't know them, I probably know somebody who does
yeah.
for real, which is kind of cool. It kind of really points out how small this country is.
I think it's
Because,
great. I mean,
yeah,
it's all about, making, new friends and new connections. And when someone is a friend of a friend, that's basically what that is.
yeah, it does. And it's very much the culture here is if you go, if say, I mean, I know my best friend is about to go away with her partner for the other half of their Christmas trip. And they're just rocking on to wherever they were planning to go with the other. So nobody's going to say to either my best friend or her partner, "Why have you brought this person I didn't invite?"
Yeah,
Because
that's
that's just
cool.
what you do. You just,
Yeah,
whoever you've got with you at the time
that's
comes with to a
what a
social gathering.
what a
And
cool
that's
call.
totally
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. It really is. It's a very it is a very welcoming culture. There was actually a song several years ago by one of our much beloved musicians, just called Welcome Home. And it was written in response to a big kerfuffle in our news about a political asylum seeker. It was very controversial whether or not he would be allowed to stay. And the song basically said, just come.
Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome home. Just come.
Yeah.
And it makes me cry every time I listen to it, because I'm like, yeah, that's the vibe of this place. That if you're fleeing something, if something's just not right where you are, come.
Cool.
And it just is so magical. And it literally brings me to tears. I can't even sing it.
I'll be there by Friday.
Awesome. You actually will join the ranks of some fantastic people. A surprising number of celebrities have land here and have homes here.
Excellent.
So
yeah. I can
because we're very chill. We're like, oh yeah. Oh,
well,
we saw Tom Cruise in Wellington the other day. Oh, okay.
Yeah, very cool.
It might make the news that they're filming something, but
maybe
for the
not.
most part, he just gets left alone.
Right.
You know.
Well,
no
we're getting like 7 or 8 inches of snow, I think, tomorrow or the day after. So it's like, okay, maybe Auckland. Yeah, maybe New Zealand.
Oh yeah, Auckland. I think it's probably been close to 100 years since Auckland had snow in winter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost the heart of summer here now.
Yeah.
And it's actually got a bit of a chill today, which is fantastic, because it's been uncomfortable the last few days. But it's probably, I don't know, it's probably in the early 20s today, maybe 21.
Gotcha.
And Celsius,
I don't know what that is in freedom units.
Freedom units. Why do you guys use that as a measure? It's so strange to me.
I don't know.
0, freezing.
Imperial.
100, boiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
One of these kids is doing his own thing. I don't know. Yeah.
It's very strange. And I have never figured out a way in my head to kind of shortcut it, because I can usually get the distance measurements in terms of inches and centimeters. I'm like, it's about 2.5 times. I can usually work that out. But I'm also a sewer, so I use a lot of inches and measurements when I'm dealing with fabric.
Sure.
I don't know why, but they genuinely work better, which I don't know why, but they do. But it's the only thing that I do use, inches and feet for. But it means I do have to convert inches and feet. But I've never got the hang of doing it with Fahrenheit to Celsius.
We're the opposite. I mean, if you ask the United States population who could convert, either distance or temperature or whatever, from, imperial to metric, nobody. I mean, less than a percentage of this people. So,
to be fair, I mean, if it's not in use in your country, then what use is it for?
Well, it's really bizarre because, I mean, I remember when I was growing up that in elementary school, there was a whole section on the metric system, and we had to learn the metric system because the world was going to the metric system. And
to be fair, our whole numerical system works on the metric system. So
yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, I'm seeing Jerome's comment about American coins. I mean,
I was just going to bring that up.
This is America at its finest, right? So a penny is 1 penny, but it costs the United States government approximately 2 pennies to make 1 penny because of the copper content. So why pennies even exist, I don't really know, because every time they make a penny, they're losing money. So,
and a lot of countries have got rid of their 1 cent unit,
their
1 penny
just round
unit
it up
for that reason. But it took me a lot. I was probably almost 20 before I figured out what nickel and dime was, before I really understood that, okay, because I'm pretty sure a nickel is 5 cents.
That's
and
correct.
A dime is 10. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. It took me a long time to work that out because it doesn't get explained anywhere.
Yeah.
And I was pre-internet at that age.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Nickel and dime. What? I know it's small change, but I was like,
yeah.
But they've done away with them here. So
there's not a whole lot of use to it. First of all, we don't use that much cash anymore. No. It's all plastic or Venmo or whatever. And also the price of goods, 100 years ago or 50 years ago or whatever was so much lower that if a loaf of bread was 10 cents, then you'd hand over a dime and you get your loaf of bread.
Yeah.
It sort of made more sense then. Now it's just, I think it's just habit. So
Yeah, well, units of cost in general have gone up, so that that need for smaller change just goes. And
right.
yeah, it's funny actually. It's that precise cost of making coins being more than the value of the coins is one of the plot points in a Discworld book.
Really? I can't wait to
It
get to
is.
it.
It's one of the later ones, but it's also if you are new to the series and are doing as I suggest, and you kind of hopefully will be soon with Going Postal, the next one in that series of characters' story is the one I'm talking about, which is making money,
Cool.
literally.
Yeah, that's well, I'm excited
So,
for it. I'm literally starting Feet of Clay either
oh,
tonight or tomorrow morning, either one of them, because I always have to have an audiobook going and I always have a sight read book going. And Tori has absolutely convinced me because I've only read Pratchett sight reading. I've not listened to these new audiobooks.
they're
And
really good.
yeah, that's what she's saying. And it's like, okay, you're pulling me from my beloved lit RPG audiobooks for this, so I'm going to trust you. The good news is that I love, the City Watch arc.
Yeah.
So I know I'm going to like the story. I will assume I'm going to like the voice
Oh,
acting. So
absolutely.
I already know going
Absolutely.
into this that I'm going to like it. And that
Yeah.
is like such a pleasure because lately I felt like a lot of the books
Because you
that I've
don't
gone
always know.
into,
You're like,
yeah, that I'm just like, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but I'm really excited to return to the disc tonight or
yeah.
tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Then this is the joy of reading series as they come out, because that's the feeling all of us got when the new Discworld book was coming, was it's going to be great. It
Yeah.
didn't matter which one it was, who it was going to have in it. It was everyone was just like, no, there's a new Discworld coming.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we took into the book, and usually is what we came out of it with, going, yay, that was great. Can't wait for the next one. And it's wonderful. When Penguin announced they were going to do the new audio, a lot of, and I count myself among them, the hardcore fans were
Sure.
like, why? There's nothing wrong with the old ones. In that the vibe of them is very English. It felt right for
Sure.
the series. The quality of the early ones, not fabulous.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to be resistant to the new audio and tried really hard not to be, like to try and accept them for, no, okay, the production value's great. And the guy they've got doing the voice of death is just
That's what
sublime.
that's what Tori says. Yeah.
Oh, and I knew that before I was anti-death. As soon as they announced who was doing the voice, I was like, oh my God, that's going to be perfect.
Cool.
Oh, good. And so it took me a few listens to kind of genuinely feel the love for it, instead of going, no, they're great quality. No, they're yep, absolute. It took me a few, but I've listened to enough of them now that I can hear the flaws in the old ones.
Sure.
Like, okay, yep, there's a charm to them. Okay, these ones are better. These ones give the books what they deserve, which is
Right.
a quality and a scale of kind of
Sure.
awesomeness
And it's
that they
perfect for
deserve.
and it's perfect for new listeners too. I mean, yeah, you might lose a little nostalgia you had for the old audio, but yeah, and I think Dresden did the same because I think that
Oh,
James Marsters came in later and then they went back and redid the audiobooks for Dresden with Marsters, at the beginning because I had a viewer that
it was only the one book. He was unavailable for, I think, book 7.
oh, is that what it
And so
was?
they recorded with somebody else, and the backlash
Oh,
on it was like, no,
that's
you
what
have
it
to get
was.
James to do this.
So he's been
And
doing them from book 1. Okay, cool. Got it.
yeah,
Okay. I had no idea
and
because I had a
it's
viewer that was asking me and I said, just make sure you get
yeah.
the Marsters version. He said, yeah, that's
Yeah,
the one
but
I
there is
got.
one of that doesn't. Yeah, that wasn't initially, and yeah, and because I struggled with Dresden, so many people I followed on BookTube loved Dresden. I was like, why can't I read Dresden? Like, this
Yeah.
should be up my alley.
Yeah.
I mean, I read quite a lot of urban sort of paranormal fantasy
Sure.
on more of the romanticy side of things.
Hmm.
So I'm like, this should be fine for me. why am I struggling? And it was such a male gaze, like it's kind of painful. Like I even had a slight disagreement yesterday with Raph about it.
Okay.
He can't get past it.
Yeah.
Understandably, it's in your face.
Yeah.
And it was Jake Bishop who said to me, try the audiobooks. You might
Yeah.
find that you get better mileage out of the audiobooks. So after it taking me literally years to get to book 4, struggling through this, I don't like, why does everyone love it? It took me maybe a month, 6 weeks to get to book 6.
Yeah.
And then I did all of the rest in 12 days.
I think
It just
that's
took the voice.
yeah, I think that's part
This
of
is in his
like
head. He's not saying it out loud.
well, right. And I think that it's
He
like
knows it's not okay.
it's almost like, when you get a text message, right? And all you're doing
Yes,
is reading it. You're not getting the tone of it. You're you're
exactly.
interpreting the tone when you're reading it, but when you're listening to
Yeah,
an audiobook, that tone may actually sound very different and your brain interprets it. So it's not so male gazing. It's not misogynistic. I don't believe in any sense of the word Jim Butcher is a misogynist. I think that he's writing a character that when you don't have the luxury of hearing the tone of it and you're only going off the written page, it
yeah.
can be greatly misinterpreted.
And I think that for a big part of it, it is. It, for me, it was being able to really hear the difference between an inside voice and an
Mhm.
outside voice. So it was his first reaction as a young man in those early books is to be focused on physical attributes and
Mhm.
not this is amazingly beautiful. Focus, focus, focus.
Yeah.
Even his brain is going, you can't say that.
Yeah.
It's almost an instinctive reaction being overruled by an intelligence going, no, we're not Neanderthals.
Right.
We treat ladies
But
like people.
yeah, but I also think that, he's portraying a younger male character and that is more real to me. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
sorry to say, but there's a lot of people that have thoughts that don't necessarily express them out loud, but they're growing, from
they
young
do it to keep
adults
it
into
inside.
adults, and those are the kinds of thoughts normal people have. And
Yeah,
I think he's writing it fairly normal. It drives me, I've had some booktuber, not direct disagreements, but I'll be watching some people that just get so down on the Dresden Files saying that, oh, it's
yeah,
just this and it's that because of that. And I'm like, I just don't think you get the context.
yeah.
But
And that's I kind of called an end to what we were talking about with Dresden. Some I don't actually want to fight with Raph about it because
yeah,
I like Raph too much to properly argue with him.
yeah,
But he's very firmly in the camp that Jim Butcher is a misogynist, that some scenes aren't necessary. Why are they even here? This is not appropriate. No, for me, I'm like, well, I don't mind those scenes being in there. I like knowing that there's an understanding of a young man's mindset that, of course, he's going to find a young
right,
girl attractive. I was a young girl, trust me. Older men, look,
right.
trust
And
me,
the truth is that
it happens.
it's the genre is urban fantasy. We're not in Noble
Yeah,
Bright. We're
and
not
it
in
began
Noble
as
Bright
noir,
epic. Yeah, it totally began
where
as
that
noir,
male gaze is part of the building blocks.
right?
And so,
Yeah,
yeah, I've learned to, and I found it very strange. And I was thinking about it last night, going, who would have thought, given my first reactions to the Dresden series, that I would be a vocal proponent to go, no, that's not, no, you're misreading it
hmm,
because it grows, it evolves, it changes. And to a certain extent, I wonder how much of it is Jim Butcher as an author reminding young men it's an inside voice. Keep it in the inside voice.
maybe later,
You know, if you want to
maybe
be a good
later
person,
on.
keep it in your head.
Could
That's,
be, but I
yeah.
mean,
So I'm choosing. That's one of the reasons, and
that's
that's
why. But I think that Stormfront started as a college paper, or shortly
he was very
thereafter.
young. He was
Right.
very
I mean,
young.
he's early 20s,
Yeah,
so
and you
that's
see his development as an author in general as the series
mhm,
progresses. So of
absolutely
course you're going to see his growth just as a man. becoming older and more in
Right.
tune with the world.
Right.
And yeah, I certainly, I mean, I love his female characters. Love them.
Yeah.
Just love them so much.
Yeah. I
If I
mean,
had
Mab
oh
is one of the scariest villains in all of fantasy. I
she
mean,
really
she really is.
oh
I mean, who would you rather not run into more than Mab? It's just a handful of characters.
yeah. And,
So yeah.
he's made a lot of the big bads women.
Hmm.
You know, you've got Mavra of the Black Court Vampires,
Hmm.
who's very frightening character. Lara of the White Court Vampires. I love her. I think she's
Hmm.
marvelous, and I can't wait to see where that storyline goes.
Yeah.
And then, like, I was like, oh, that's going to be so great. Love
Yeah.
Molly, love Charity. I love all of these versions of women that he gives us because
Hmm.
he, like any good author, the women are given as much range of personhood as the male characters.
Sure.
So the fact that we're still having this discussion in 2024, nearly 25, still boggles the mind.
Right.
So why is this something I should praise? This should be not noteworthy. But it is.
But then again, it all also comes down to that's why there's a million books. And this is something that I was
This is true. This is
I was talking with Andrew on Discord earlier, and it's like, and to your point, with Wrath, even
yeah.
if I agree with my favorite booktuber on 95% of our tastes aligning, there's still 5% that we don't. And with the amount of books that all of us read, that 5% is a lot of books. So,
It is.
it's like,
numerically, it's quite a few.
it really is. And it's like, I can align with Mike, for example, on 95% of our stuff, but that 5% is probably going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 books a year that we vehemently disagree on. So, yeah.
And it's honoring the friendships among booktube
Oh, yeah.
as well, of going, I don't actually want to fight with you about it. So I'm going to say what I think, and you'll say what you think. And depending how passionate we are,
right,
we might have a good discussion, or we might go, we're not going to talk about that anymore. Because
I mean, it's like, I never want to like dump on anybody's favorite stuff because I'm glad that they found something that they really love a lot. But I also feel like, all right, if I'm going to do a channel and I'm going to be authentic, I want to really be honest about what I thought. And you know what? I did not go to college for book reviewing. I did not go to school for how to interpret properly a story. All it is my opinion, right? So if someone, and it's really more so for the people that find that what I read, they also like. So not so much that they either pick it up or don't pick it up, but maybe when they pick it up, right? Maybe it's not such a rush for them to go get something that I'm kind of just mediocre on. If they know that far and away most of the things that we agree on are also available.
Just feel, and you're like, oh, okay, that's where it may sit for me, there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And you're right, it does help for a lot of us. The point I was sort of trying to make earlier with living in New Zealand is not having a big community of readers around me. Booktube has been an absolute lifesaver in terms of giving me a community to bounce off, to kind of go, oh, that person likes those books too. Oh, and they read that. I didn't hear good things about that, but they like it. What does everybody else think? And that being able to sort of outsource the checking has been absolutely just worth so much in terms of time.
Well, right.
Do I want to read a book that I now have found out the vast majority of people agree isn't very good?
Yeah. And I think, and Jimmy sent me a message, I don't even know how long ago it was, but it was so relevant. And he said, a lot of viewers of BookTube are really hoping for BookTubers to curate some good finds for them so they don't have to, risk their money, risk their time, whatever, where somebody else has already found things that sound like right up their alley. And I just love that idea of curation, the way that Jimmy put it to me.
And I mean, he's a wonderful speaker as well. He's forever putting himself down, but he's a remarkably onto it young man. And I think the world of Jimmy. And he's right. That is exactly what we're doing. I
Mhm.
come at it from the other end of it, going, these are the ones I love. So I want you to love them. So blah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Here's
we
my
all,
love for this thing. Love
yeah.
it
And
as
we,
much as me.
right. And we all have our different ways of doing it too, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, you know, John is very emotionally passionate when he's describing a book. Philip
Yeah.
is very analytical and will tell you why this book works. Mike is the everyman, just kind of like,
Oh,
hey,
very
you
much
know,
so.
this is
Yeah.
this and that. So I just like how everybody's got their own way of their own voice. And I tend to gravitate towards the booktube channels because honestly, there's so many booktubers out there right now.
I
um,
know.
One of the viewers of the channel, and she's got her own channel. Her name's Maeve, or the channel is Maeve Ever Books, and she had put up a little post saying, "Hey, sorry, I haven't seen everybody's videos yet. I checked my watch later list. There's like 150 videos still unwatched." And I was like, "Look, there are
Yeah.
more than 24 hours of content that comes out about books every
Oh, yeah.
single day on
Trying to catch up is
booktube.
mental.
It's not, there's physically not enough hours in the day to
Yeah.
watch everything that you'd probably want to watch, and that doesn't even include the things YouTube's not showing you that you don't even know exist yet.
Well, this
So
is it. I didn't know that John existed until a few months ago. And I was
yeah,
like, how have I not found this man already?
yeah,
That's my kind of content.
yeah, absolutely. But a lot of it is collaboration too, because I didn't know he existed till he was on Tori's channel.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then you meet them through these live streams and you go, oh, that person was fascinating.
Hmm.
Or I don't know that I'm a fan of that one. But
Yeah, I mean, but
that's the
that's
nature of people. There's going to be people that you bounce off of or you resonate with. And you
no
just,
doubt about it. There are booktubers that, for whatever reason, when I watch, I'm just not feeling it. And you know
yeah,
what? That's okay, because plenty of people watch my channel and they don't feel it either.
yeah,
So that's just a normal thing. It's that kind of 95%, 5% again, you know? So
yes.
you're not gonna jive with everybody. There's a lot of people that look at Rick Thunder or Funky Mirage and go, I would never waste 20 minutes of my life watching this nonsense.
Whereas
There's
for
a
me, it
lot.
was 20 minutes of my day.
Right. And that's it. So it's about kind of finding your people that sort of get what you're
Yeah.
doing. And by the way, also like the same books that you do for the most part. I mean, I have a suspicion that, you know, this Friday I'm going to release a video which is like my top 10 most disappointing reads of
Oh,
the year. And yeah, there's going to be people that are probably going to be bummed out because it might be some of their favorite stuff, but I'll try to do it in a compassionate way. Just saying, once again, if you love it, awesome. But yeah, Jerome.
yes. So not true.
Yes,
But I do like
Jerome.
this question. How big is your TBR? I honestly don't know. I say, oh, it's on the list. The list is an ephemeral pile of titles in
Yeah,
my head.
yeah,
That if I see it again when I need to read something, I'll be
yeah,
like, oh, I remember that.
yeah. I mean,
I don't
like
actually count.
I haven't been adding to my list a ton because my TBR is ridiculous with big books.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm sort of, I was thinking about it earlier today, and gosh, I don't even remember who I was talking to. I was talking to one of our patrons, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this because in January we're going to start the Wars of Light and Shadow, John and I,
Ah,
and several other booktubers,
mhm.
and while that book isn't overly long, it's like,
It's
you know, it's
okay.
dense.
That's
It's
yeah.
dense, and you know, the only Jenny Wirtz book I've read is To Ride Hell's Chasm, and I loved it. And I know that she intentionally writes it so the words just don't fly off the page and you really have to pay attention to every single sentence. And of course, that's going to be the same with Curse of the Mistwraith, book 1 of
Yeah.
Wars of Light and Shadow. But what I'm planning to do, and I will be calling Counselor Derry probably by April, because I'm intending to continue on my Malazan journey every other month and Wars of
Oh
Light and
my
Shadow
Lord.
every other month. So, hey, speak of the devil.
Oh, it's John. Were your ears burning, John?
Look what the cat,
we were totally talking smack.
literally the cat dragged it in, dragged it back out, and dragged it back in again.
I reckon. But
Yeah.
yeah, like, that's a lot of reading. Brian.
Well,
Come on.
since John's on, I've told him this 100 times. So we had planned to do Wars of Light and Shadow in 2025. But we hadn't really set a date yet. We didn't know when we were going to do it. And my thought was, I read Gardens of the Moon, book 1 of Malazan, back in February. And then I read Dead House Gates in June and Memories of Ice in July. And then I did House of Chains. And it was like, I was going to kind of press through one a month because, like I said, I'm sort of a completionist. I want to get the story going. And even though Steven Erikson himself says, hey, you don't need to read these all, simultaneously or back to back to back.
Yeah.
I love the book so much. I want to. It's not a chore for me to want to go read the next Malazan book
when you're in it.
Right. I mean, at least so far, like there's been people that like the first half of the series better than the second half. And, they said, well, you're still in the first half, your pacing may change as it gets, to the back end. And
that could be like anything in that you're eating a heavy meal. You're like, oh, I'm loving this.
Yeah. Then
halfway through, go, actually,
okay,
I'm really cool.
I'll take a bag. Yeah. I'll take a bag to go home.
Not enjoying it any less.
So long story short, I was going to read Malazan through The Crippled God, which is book 10. And then I was planning to start Wars of Light and Shadow with John, which I figured sometime like the middle of the year. And then I'm watching John's Weekly Reader and he comes on, he says, yeah, Brian and I'm going to invite a bunch of other people and we're starting it in January. And I'm like, well, we are?
Hang on a minute.
I'm like, okay.
The plan a little.
See, John he's on the fly. You gotta keep an eye on that dude.
You know what it is? It's those imaginary production meetings. That's the problem.
In this particular case, I have to admit I did miss that production meeting. Jacob and I were probably off doing something else entirely. And John made the executive decision in lieu of us not being present. So
that's right.
So I'm going to try to do this and we'll see how it works.
And that's not being in any way derisive of that, but those are some big books.
Well, they're just
they're not, we talk about books that talk down to a reader and spoon feed you. These are the opposite. These are authors who trust their readers. These are authors who expect you to have the ability to see more than just the words. And they're giving you a lot to deal with. And they're not talking down in any way. If anything, they're talking up. They're like, no, you have to lift your game
absolutely.
if you want to engage in this story. So it takes more than your
does.
standard tome.
It does.
Those are some challenging reads, and not in a bad way.
No, I mean, I'm excited for it.
That effort.
Yeah. The only thing that I don't love is the fact that I can only, with those books, snacks at the production meeting. Okay, I'll show up, John, for the production meetings if there's snacks. Fair enough. Yeah. Either that or I'll bring an old,
Donut knows to ask the right questions.
I'll bring a frozen old Rick Thunder, meal tray. So, exactly the old platter. But I think the thing for me is that I'm always wanting to read multiple stories because I just love reading so much. And the only downside to my plan right now for me is that I can only read so many pages a day. And of those particular 2 series, it's literally half the page count that I can read on any other author than either Erikson or Wirtz. So I already know what's going to end up happening is they're going to take over most of the weeks of the month. And I
Yeah.
suspect I'm going to be in a situation like I've been in all of December with Wind and Truth, where
Yeah.
there's many books that I want to get to, but
It's
just
just not gonna happen.
the amount of words, and Wind and Truth is
Yeah.
different because the writing is very accessible. It's just a lot of it, right? I mean, there's no, I don't think there's any
And it's
Wars of
quite
Light and
late in the season as well, so it's
it's the
remembering
last
make
one, and yeah, I mean, it's 1,300 pages, so even at a quick pace, it still, takes up a big chunk of the month. Um,
Yeah.
Even if it was a shorter Malazan book or a shorter Jenny Wirtz book, it's still going to
Still
take
doesn't
me the
make it
same
easy.
amount of time
Yeah.
as a big Sanderson book. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm very blessed that I can listen to audio, because there's like John doesn't really, he gets distracted, and Mike is famous for not being able to
Yeah.
pay attention to audio. And I'm lucky in the fact that I work for myself, that while I'm doing
Well, you're
sort
able
of,
to take that break from those big, heavy
well, right.
reads to have
That's where
things like Discworld or Dresden sort of.
that's Dresden, that's Discworld, that's
Yeah.
mostly for me lit RPG. I read very little lit RPG in physical reading anymore, just because my eyesight time is taken up by the
Yes.
stuff that
The
I specifically
yeah.
don't want to do Malazan on audio.
Oh, no.
There's just no way. There's people like,
It's
I
a
think,
different level of concentration for a story that asks you to engage so deeply,
yeah,
and it just does.
I tend to like audiobooks that have more of a limited cast, and not
Yes.
have, I don't know how people do Wheel of Time on audio, where there's literally thousands of named characters, and
Yeah.
tell me that you remember
Yeah.
it. And probably some people can, but when I was physically reading Wheel of Time a few years ago, I was like, there's no way I could be doing this on audio, because I'd just be lost with the names.
Yeah. I don't actually know, sorry, Sal. Are the audios any good? I haven't actually heard anyone who has done Malazan on audio, so I don't know. Possibly they're really good. It's just that the material is asking more of a reader than an audio is gonna help them with. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
that's the joy of
I
lighter
sus
reads
right.
sometimes.
I suspect it's sort of like Wheel of Time, and the fact that it's sprawling. There's lots of locations.
Yeah.
There's people in different sections of the world that you got to try to remember. One of the things
Yeah.
I noticed with Robert Jordan is that, for whatever reason, the dude loved the initial L and started so many
Oh,
female names
no.
with the word
Oh,
L, that even in the books, I was flipping to the
yeah.
back. I was trying to, it was like, if there's
Which
one
one is
more,
this? Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sal makes a point that only the second read do the names make sense. I have found with a lot of the longer series from my earlier reading, I can now do on audio because I already know the story. So my rereads on audio, I can keep track of because I already know the story.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would necessarily recommend them as, yeah, go there first.
The first place. Sure.
I mean, I say that readily for Discworld
Yeah.
because the humor and the tone carries really well through audio. You don't need to be reading stuff into it. It's all there.
Right.
It's all there
Exactly.
as part
Yeah.
of the story. But to something as like Wheel of Time or Malazan, where there's just so much, there's just such a scale. I read A Song of Ice and Fire before I listened to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I could have followed it as well if I'd gone straight
Right.
to audio.
Right.
And that's for a reasonably accessible fantasy story. It's
Yeah.
just the scope is so big.
Right.
Trying to remember everybody, trying to
Right.
remember everything. When you're reading, you can at least go, oh, well, that's a B name that's little. Okay, that's Bran. Okay, that's a different person
Absolutely.
to this B name that's, got 8 letters. That's a different person. Okay. Whereas listening, that's too many B names.
Yeah.
But there are definitely stuff now that I can do on audio I couldn't have a few years ago, just because I have done so many rereads
Right.
now.
Yeah,
an
the
audio.
brain and the brain processes it, the audio different, right? The more you do it, the better your brain receptors get connected and understand it.
Yeah. This shaking of my head is for Shadia. I warned you.
Is it
The live
bad?
shipped audio, I have become infamous. I use a GIF on the Discord of Bill Nye, he as a vampire going, abominable. It's so bad, Brian. It's so bad.
I didn't do
It's
any of the audio.
painful.
I did no audio for Realm of the
Oh,
Elderlings. So, yay
seriously.
for me.
It's
The
so bad.
My only
Oh,
problem with Realm of the Elderlings is that I did it all on ebook on my iPad
oh,
before
okay.
Kindle. So when we talk about like the books behind me and all that stuff,
Yeah.
there's a few series that I literally do not have a single book from. And the
Yeah.
fact that that came up as my number one all-time fantasy series and I don't own a physical book is
Hey,
so
I
backwards to
didn't
me.
either for such a long time. And
Yeah.
because having got out of a relationship, leaving
Yeah.
my library behind, and almost everything that I had was on my Kindle. And it's
Yeah.
literally only been the last couple of years that I've started to, and yes, it was receiving this amazingly heartwarming gift from BookTube in general that made me go, oh, I
Yeah.
can have physical books again, that I have started to rebuy books. But it does mean that I have so many copies now. I've got physical now of my favorite series, as well as ebook, as well
Yeah.
as audiobook.
Yeah.
And when we come to things like Discworld, there are so many versions of audiobooks. So I've
Yeah.
got like 3 or 4 versions of some things because there's the radio play of this, and then there's the BBC production of this, and then there's
That's right.
so
You
many,
you
and
got
there's no
lots.
way I'm not going to have them
Yeah,
because I love so much.
it's bonkers. I think about as we're talking about this, it's like Realm of the Elderlings, The Dark Tower, the Dresden Files.
Yeah,
I don't own. I'm complete on all of those. I don't own a single physical book of any of it.
yeah.
That is just so nuts to me.
Yeah.
Really weird.
I used to have, well, I mentioned earlier, I read some of the paranormal romance sort of side to things. I used to have all of Nalini Singh's books, and that was like 30 or 40 books. I don't have any physically now, but I've got all of them on Kindle and most of
Yeah,
them on Audible.
yeah,
And, Dresden, I adore Dresden now. Dresden's one of my favorite series. I've got all of them on ebook. I've got all of them on Audible
yeah,
because, of course,
yeah,
and I'm still buying the dearer to my heart in terms of time first. So I'm still slowly building up my Discworlds now because I've
sure.
got my Song of Ice and Fire. I've obviously got Realm of the Elderlings.
Yeah,
And now Discworld is the one I'm slowly buying physically. And I'm
yeah.
getting the beautiful library editions, the hardcover ones.
That's awesome.
And I always feel like I've done myself a treat. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
these are
absolutely.
books I've read how many times, Brian?
Yeah,
How many times?
but it's
But
still
to get
like
them,
this beautiful piece of art that you love, you know?
yeah.
So, and it's weird too because I was on the fantasy wait list forever for Broken Binding. And
Oh, of course, yes.
then they sent out a thing saying, "Hey, we see you're on the wait list, but we're starting the sci-fi, subscription. If you want to do that one, you can do that one." So I did that one. And so far I've already read all the books that they sent. Um,
But it's
so,
good,
but it's
you know?
nice to have them. And then on the
Yeah.
fantasy one, I got off that wait list, I don't know, like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and the first series that they've sent out is the Tad Williams Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn.
Oh, yes, and oh my god, they're beautiful, aren't
I
they?
They're
Yeah.
gorgeous, and you know
Oh,
what? I
read
have
them. Oh,
I haven't read them yet, so those will
really?
be yeah,
Well, you need
I'm
to wait because that's another big one.
right, that's the whole thing. It's like I look at the Green Angel Tower, and it's just like the size of a Sando book with the density probably of
Yeah.
something closer to a Janny Words. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't read Tad Williams,
I'd
but
put it
it's
closer to,
like
Hob
George
in
R. R.
terms of
Martin.
not
Hob, yeah.
as,
Okay,
but
good.
reasonably,
Yeah.
it'll take you a bit to get through
y-
them, but they are
Yeah.
lovely in that same way that there's a really sort of comforting old-fashionedness to them with this more modern sensibility, and yeah, they're wonderful, 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 wonderful.
Yeah,
So
I'm excited to do it, but it might happen at the end of next year. It might not
mhm,
happen till the following year because
yeah,
yeah,
you've got some big books on your plate.
that's true. Which series do I want to physically collect? I mean,
Yeah, like,
it's really
if we pin
weird.
you down and say, "Brian, you've won a competition, okay? This is
Yeah.
WKRP, and you've won your favorite books.
Oh
Name
my
them
god.
now."
Do I get to listen to meet Les Nessman is the question.
Not worry?
So
Okay.
oh gosh. It's really strange. I mean, there's 3 to come to mind. One, obviously, Realm of the Elderlings.
Uh-huh.
One, Song of Ice and Fire. The Dark Tower. Those are probably the 3 that I would. I don't know. I mean, if I had to, it's weird. I'd
Yeah.
probably say Realm of the Elderlings. I think
Mhm.
because I mean, it's just like I said, it's been sitting atop my all-timer list for a
Yeah.
while. I don't read mass market paperbacks because my eyes are terrible now.
Mhm.
And it used to be like I read a Game of Thrones on the original mass market paperback that I borrowed
Wow.
from my brother-in-law.
Ooh.
Because and the font's tiny, but back then I could read it no problem. And now it's just like, oh my gosh. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
It
would want to get the bigger ones, at least the trade, paperback ones, if possible, just because if I'm ever going to physically reread it, then I'd want it to be eyesight friendly. I've
yeah.
noticed with some of the earlier books in the Sun Eater series, they're not particularly eyesight friendly,
Ooh,
even in the
okay.
paperbacks. um, Small font. And I actually mentioned that in a live with Christopher Rocchio, and he was aware of it. He's like, "Yeah, I know. They should have been a little bit bigger, but it's his publisher's
But,
decision, not his."
yeah, is it
Yeah,
a publishing cost? Is it about, okay, if we can get more pages on a page, there's less pages than the book, it costs us
right.
less to produce. So,
Yeah,
I imagine
absolutely.
that's part of the equation. Um, I wish they'd hurry up.
Yeah,
If the world could come back to the pre-pandemic days when books just came out
hmm,
regularly, often, that would be
yeah,
great.
yeah,
That would be fabulous. Obviously, we then also had the year of surprise Brando, and dude, did you have to?
yeah.
I mean, come on, talk about interrupting the freaking process for everybody else. Come
Yeah.
on.
It's really strange. I don't remember who I was talking with. Maybe it was part of the reading sprints that we did the other night on Tori's channel, but like I'll still default to Mistborn as one of my all-time favorite trilogies. And I love that a lot. It's just got a special place in my heart, but the more other authors that I read that I
Yeah.
find myself drawn to, the less I'm interested in Brandon Sanderson. And it's no dig on his fandom at all. He's got a
Oh,
pretty,
yeah.
he's probably the largest fandom, at least right now.
I think at the
But
moment, I would say so.
I just find other authors to be more compelling for me. And as I'm now at the 50% mark of Wind and Truth, I'm just
Mhm.
pushing through it. It's not
Yeah, because you were saying you're struggling to really feel the passion to
it's
keep
just
going.
it's just weird for me because the guy's a talented writer, and
Mhm.
like I was saying, in the same paragraph he could have 2 sentences that are just outstanding, and you read it and you go, my god, that is just brilliant. And then 2
Yeah.
sentences in the same paragraph are just terrible. Like, what is this? So
Yeah.
I find him to be consistently inconsistent in the
Oh.
last few books of Stormlight. And I just
A
wish that
few people have said that, and I think,
I,
and everyone's sort of defaulted to he needed somebody to edit him more harshly. Would you
well,
say you're in that camp, you think?
100%. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
overly long. And I said the same thing about Rhythm of War, is that it could have been
Mhm.
300 pages less. So far, I'm on page about 700 ish with Wind and Truth. And I could have easily, could have been 400 or 500 pages. you could easily chop out 200 of those pages and not lost any
You're not
story.
even halfway through.
Yeah,
Oosh.
well, I think it's just like halfway, and yeah, like I said, I mean, I want to be a completionist with Stormlight Archive. I want to.
When you get to this point, you're not gonna finish.
Well, right, and it is a beloved series, and a lot of my
Yeah.
really good friends on BookTube just love him and love the
Yes.
series, and I want to be able to have conversations with them about it. And you know what, sometimes my mind can be changed too. I'm not just like, hey, my opinion is the only one that I'll ever listen to. If someone makes a compelling case to me why I am maybe misguided in my thoughts on this one, I'm open-minded enough to go, you know what, that's a really excellent point.
Yeah.
And
I will admit, when people tell me that Assassin's Quest is too long, I
mhm.
say to them, on your first read, maybe.
Yeah,
The reread, every single one of those words is worth it because that means something different then. So
yeah,
just say, and yeah, you need to have read it to be able to have an opinion. And
yeah,
Sal, I do love the Empire trilogy, but I also know what Brian has on his page this year
right. I mean,
coming,
it's just like
and I will push it later
I
because
need some
I love the
short.
Empire trilogy. It's one of the very few physical trilogies of books I did take when I left the relationship. That's how high it is in my
Sure,
ranking.
sure.
It was one of the very few. I left with 12 books, and
Wow,
those were 3 of them. So
wow.
it's a strong trilogy that I highly recommend. But I have not read any Brandon Sanderson at all because I hadn't heard of him before I
Hmm.
found BookTube. I
Hmm.
was in my not able to read new stuff funk
Hmm.
anyway,
Hmm.
and nothing I've heard about Sanderson has any of the hook lines that would impel me to read some. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't actually care.
I mean,
Nothing
that's
there sounds like it's me.
yeah. I then yeah, you're not under. There's no booktuber agreement that we all signed that says you have to read Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I don't have to. If something, and people, please, you're welcome to try and convince me. At this point, there's just nothing that's made me go, yes, I will prioritize that.
mhm.
But there are definitely people who have spoken about other series that I've gone, I want to read that. That is that is actually going to happen at some point because
Mhm.
I genuinely want to get there. Sun Eater is my goal for next year. So many people have been so insistent to me
Mhm.
that I will enjoy it. It has these things that I like that I'm like, okay, I will read it because it does sound like something I'm going to enjoy. I've seen
Yeah,
interviews with Chris Rockio, and I'm like, this guy, I like the way this guy speaks about his characters. I
yeah,
like the way this guy talks about his storytelling. Like, yeah, I think I'm looking forward to reading Sun Eater,
yeah.
whereas I have literally no pull to a Sanderson series at
Yeah,
this point.
and they're different, and they're very different. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Christopher Rocchio is not writing to the broadest audience possible, I think
Yes.
intentionally. And I think Brandon Sanderson is. And that's
Yeah.
just how he is as an author, and that's cool. But I think I think Christopher Rocchio has a very clear idea of not only what his series is, but who his readers are.
Yeah.
And
And
like you
that's why
talk,
he's so
like,
successful.
right. And
He's
like you
got it
talked about, he's
right.
not hand holding anybody through any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's great. I've had my quibbles with Sun Eater. I've been pretty vocal about it. I liked the
Mhm.
first 3 books and the 6th book much better than I liked books 4 and 5. But as I look at the totality of the series, I understand why the events in book 4 and book 5 had to happen, because you
Yeah.
have to have ebb and flow in a series. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's not just in each book that you get those ups and downs. Sometimes it's the overall series
Yes.
themselves that a book has to be sort of on the lower end of things. And in my
Yeah.
particular
Just by
case, it was,
nature of eh,
yeah, I
well,
didn't
you
like
get it
the,
with people with the Song of Ice and Fire, where your first 3 books are this first initial arc, and then we
mm-hmm,
get Feast for Crows. and you get dance. And again, we're building up. Feast for Crows doesn't get the love because it's doing different things that will pay off later.
Yeah.
Because it is coming. When's coming?
Winter
I've
is
had my
coming.
daily dose of copium.
There you go.
It's
Well,
coming.
it's literally coming here. 7 or 8 inches of winter will be here in the next 48 hours. So
That's crazy to me. That really is.
meanwhile, oh, sorry, if you wanted to ask that.
No, please keep going.
I meant to ask you, because I know you're an avid watcher of BookTube. Did you see Brian Lee Durfee's review of Dungeon Crawler Carl yesterday?
I did. I commented about an hour after you did.
You did.
And I was so happy. I really was. I was like, yay! Because he began it for the same reason I did. There was just so many people going, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And I needed to be able to answer that in my own head, to have read the first one so I could hear the voices and go, okay, you think so, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't ignore that many voices. So I'm like, well, it doesn't feel like a massive commitment to listen to the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hooked, much like Brian speaks in his own video. That was it. It was me. And I listened to all 6 of the available ones, I think twice in that first week.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm in wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And it's amazing how it goes from this real kind of fun, funny adventure to having some very serious,
really deep,
dark, psychosis types of, thoughts, because
really get some scary things going on inside of people because they're under so much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And it reads very real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody in my channel is surprised. I deal with PTSD. I deal with depression. I'm
Mm-hmm.
familiar with mental pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It reads very true in terms of the way they're all reacting and the way they're lashing out and the way they're finding things hilariously funny because they're just under so much pressure.
Yeah.
And
Carl's kind of an angry guy in his mind to begin with, right? I mean, his girlfriend's been taking advantage of him. He's not really where he wants to be in life. He's had these parental issues that have been.
I don't see him as angry. I see him as very stubborn, and he's becoming angry now.
Well, I think the anger is bubbling. I think the anger is coming out, but I think it's coming out because as I, I don't want to say too much because of spoilers, but when we get backstory on his parents and when we get backstory on the girlfriend cheating on him and all that stuff,
he's told himself that, okay, I've processed and I'm chill.
Right. But he's not. And all the pressures of
damage.
Yeah, all this pressures of the dungeon is boiling over his past. And I think that's
and they're using it against him, which of course is making
and that's where I think Matt Denneman has really evolved the series, where it went from something just really comedic and fun to remaining comedic and fun, but also bringing in these moments of holy crap, this is super serious part of the book. And I feel as engaged with it as I would any other traditional fantasy novel or any other literary novel. And it's just the device. Yes, it is, Tharnell.
I was going to say Brian needs to answer that one because it has been my spot, so I don't have another review.
I mean, if you can do audio, it's even better. The narrator is
audio. Blew my mind.
Get the audio. So the audio is narrated by a guy named Jeff Hayes. And Jeff started a company several years ago called Sound Booth Theater. And he sort of made his hay doing lit RPG because up until Cradle and Dungeon Crawler Carl more recently, you couldn't find any of this stuff in a Barnes and Noble or in any bookstore. It was only on ebooks, occasionally print to order on Amazon, and tons of audiobooks. And so he started doing lots of lit RPG, and Jeff Hayes is just brilliant with a million different voices, and they all sound unique. He's also a guy that can do dozens of female characters
And they
just
sound like women.
they sound like women. And so
Oh, blew my mind.
I was talking with Jonathan McLean, who, you know, is narrating the book that you've
Mhm.
been reading. And he said, I wish I could do all of the
Yeah, he's not
voices,
quite there for women's voices,
you
but
know.
I've just been listening to,
Yeah,
um, and the standard, the Jeff Hayes is in a class of his own.
he really is. I mean, I've listened
Final
to
Those audiobooks
hundreds.
are breathtakingly brilliant.
Yeah.
I've
And
never heard anything to that standard.
yeah, his talent
Oh,
level is extraordinary, and he has surrounded himself with some unbelievably talented people too. I just listened
really
not that
has.
long ago to a guy named Justin James, who works at Sound Booth and sent me a couple of audiobooks to give a listen to, and he is spectacular. And it's just, he's got Annie Ellicott there, who does a lot of the female voices in many of his series where they want to have multi actors doing it.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely.
I mean, being able to do audio is a skill. It's like learning to read. You have to learn
It's
how to do it.
yeah,
And it took me a while. And I did it with rereads, and that I became familiar with how my brain needed to, what kind of gear I needed to be in to listen to it. It's hard to explain, but I figured it out, and I do the majority of my reading now through Audible.
mm-hmm.
And I love the new Discworlds. I've come to really love them for what they are, their quality and the character that they've been able to imbue them with. Getting the perfect voice for Death helps a great deal, because Death's in all of them.
Can't wait.
And they also have, Bill Nye does the footnotes.
Cool.
And having the footnotes in a different voice really helps. In that it goes, oh, we're just pausing you here because I had a thought that I needed to include. And it doesn't interrupt the story as much as if the same voice was doing it.
Cool.
Because it feels jarring when the same voice does it. But to be able to just flow straight back into the story after a footnote, marvelous.
Yeah, I'm fired
so
up.
I came into Dungeon Crawler Carl thinking, okay, I've got a pretty good idea of what class audio sounds like.
Sure. Yeah, then you run into Jeff Hayes. Yeah, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
Seriously.
Derry Snow.
Blew my mind how good that audio was. That audio is astonishingly brilliant. And I totally understand why there are readers of the series who love it the way I do, or that I love it the way they do, who are waiting for the audio.
Same.
I couldn't. I needed to know what the story was going to do. I have to listen.
You're the same as Leslie.
Yeah.
Leslie,
I had to know.
Leslie had to buy it and know. And it's like I won't experience it that way because I'm so trained to only
am I
do
going
it
to
this
get
way.
The audio the day it comes out?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's
of
how
course.
good the last book is. And oh my God, that was amazing. The audio is going to be even better.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
The thought of that is so exciting that I'm this excited about a book I already know what's happening in. I have the date in February.
It's February,
on my calendar.
That's awesome.
So that's the day I get to listen.
That's awesome.
Jeff Hayes doing this. That's how good.
I'll be doing Malazan Midnight Tides on reading while I'm listening to Dungeon Crawler Carl 7.
Absolutely. Inevitable Ruin. Oh, so just, I couldn't wait. And now, of course, I have to wait for the next one even longer than those of you who are settling for waiting for this one.
Yeah. I mean, when I found
how can I do that, Brian? How? When you think how exciting things are now.
Yeah. It's really good because it's giving the whole genre a huge boost. And like I said, when we're talking about mainstream booktubers now talking about lit RPG, that is great. When Tori was a team captain for me when we were in the readathon. And so I got to know her a little bit. And not this summer, but a summer ago before I started the channel, I was kind of bouncing the idea of doing YouTube off of her and trying to because I really didn't know any other people that had a channel that I had
Yeah.
direct line of communication with on Discord, right? I'd watched
Yeah.
every one of Mike's videos, and occasionally we would reply to each other about sports tweets. But certainly wasn't going to ask him about how to
Yeah.
do booktube or anything. I didn't know any Philip, and none of these people I knew. And so I went to Tori and I said, so I'm thinking about doing a booktube channel. And she was like, so what would you talk about? And I said,
Yeah.
I'm really into lit RPG and urban fantasy, and I don't see a whole lot of channels
There's not a lot. There's a little
that
bit, but not a
that
huge amount.
really discuss it in the same way that epic fantasy or classic or modern sci-fi gets discussed. It's almost poo-pooed in a way
Yeah,
on
it's
booktube.
like, oh, yeah,
Oh, it's just that. And
yeah.
I'm like,
A
I
little
think
the way we
I've
talk about YA even, or,
yeah.
it's
Yeah, I mean,
for
but it's
outside our circle.
and in some
No.
some people's cases, that's correct, because when we live in a world of self-publishing, there's no limit on how many books can come out a day.
Yeah.
And lit RPG is sort of famous for a lot of quantity over quality. There's a ton
Yeah.
of schlock out there, because if you can write it and hit upload, you could be on Royal Road publishing a web serial, or you could do Amazon, see if you can sell any books, but there's nobody to tell you this book isn't very good.
Yeah. There's
And
no one to say,
so,
the
yeah,
market maybe need this one.
right. And so, because lit RPG had more indie going prior to
Yes.
more epic fantasy, which has now seen this
Yeah.
emergence of self-publishing, lit
Yeah.
RPG's been doing this in self-pub for 13 years. And
Wow.
in that time, there's been far more misses than there's been hits,
Yeah.
because just of skill level of the author. And that's, it's okay. They probably came back and wrote better books as time goes on, but I've
Yeah.
sifted through hundreds of these things to know, okay, this author knows what they're doing, or this
Yes.
narrator,
This is some cream that's risen to the top.
right, or this narrator wouldn't pick up this project if it was junk.
No,
And
that's right.
so it's like I've narrowed it down, and they keep coming out at such a rapid pace that I'm so good on lit RPG for a while, but I still want new stuff, because somebody had mentioned to me that they would like to see me do a more regular lit RPG news type
Ooh.
of a program, because now
What's
that
coming?
because now that it's becoming a little bit more watched to the general public. So yeah, that's sort of on my maybe 2025 list. And
Nice.
that means I need to read more new lit
Yes.
RPG and not just continue. Hey, I read Primal Hunter 9 after I read He Who Fights with Monsters 11 while I'm waiting for Dungeon Crawler Carl 7 to come out.
Yeah.
Because in reality, that's just 3 recommendations, right? I mean, it's just
Yes.
it's just the series.
Rather
So
than this is a new author that actually could well be worth watching because this was
right.
great.
It's not news to me to say, hey, I liked book 9 and you should check out book 10.
Yeah.
So
If
that's
you've
why
got to book 9, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna.
well, that's kind of why these, longer ongoing series tend to get the higher review scores on Goodreads,
Yes,
because
they've
people have
established themselves.
well, right. People have noped out. If they don't like it by book 2 or 3, they're not there for book 11. And so
That's
the people
right.
that are there are maybe nitpicking what happens in the story as compared to previous entries in the series, but they're not like, oh my God, I hate this author, I hate this series,
No,
because
that's
they're already
right.
on book 11.
They're invested.
Yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing, particularly in fantasy, and that when we do find authors that we jive with, that speak to us, that we resonate with, it's fantasy or it's lit RPG. We're not
Mhm.
talking about a standalone. We get to continue to engage with that
Mhm.
vibe, with that atmosphere for
Yeah.
as long as the author is prepared to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's one of the joys when you do find an author that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, so Sal and Thano are having a wonderful discussion with books coming out in Chadia too. And next year is a really good year for me. I mean, so many authors who I have come to love have got things coming. And I'm beyond excited.
Awesome.
That people at Dragonsteel got the news before anyone else broke my heart that I couldn't be the one breaking the news, that Hob has multiple books on the go,
That's
with
awesome.
at least one coming either next year or the year after.
Wow.
In the realm of the Elderlings world,
That's awesome. Right?
I was over here losing my shit,
Yeah, I believe it.
frankly. I was
I believe
beside
it.
myself because, oh my God. But I'm going to get Empire of the Vampire 3.
Here you go.
Yeah, I'm totally fangirling over Jay Kristoff's adult work. Fabulous in terms of doesn't take itself too seriously, but
Yeah.
it's really well written
Yeah.
and has a great amount of humor and has a fair amount of gore, and vampires
Yeah.
are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And, oh, I'm here for that.
Yeah.
Here for that.
And like yourself and
New
John.
Dresden coming.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Is New Dresden coming next year?
He's just hit, I think, 89% on the written bar on the website. He's great for that. He'll update.
Oh, cool.
where he's at for writing,
I never check that stuff because it's like, I don't know, but cool. That's awesome to know.
I'm so excited. It's genuine fantasy space based on another planet, not even planet, a different world, different rules. Vampires are vampires. And our main character is the last remaining of the people who fight vampires, but it's told in different timelines. So there are points in the story where there are more that hunt vampires.
Mhm.
So you meet them and you're like, oh, great. But then you already know he's the last one. So you're like, I don't want to get attached to these characters because obviously they're going to die. But then you do get attached to those characters. And it means that all of these timeline stories are investing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, is this where they leave? Oh, phew, they made it through that one. Okay. It's like, oh, no, more dread for next time because now they're even more likely to die. And great characters. And he writes women very well. And there's a few spicy scenes in it. And I like having listened to Jay Kristoff talk to Mike a couple of years ago when he said, my wife read my first attempt at spicy scenes and she gave me a list. And she's basically given him some pretty hardcore filth to read.
There you go.
And it's clearly improved his game. Because the spicy scenes, got to say, Empire of the Vampire,
it
Jay
works.
Kristoff knows what he's doing.
Okay.
Just saying.
You know, that's a series that I know you love and John loves it, and Mike loves it. And it's just, you know, I got to pick my battles. And my battles right now are in the Wars of Light and Shadow and in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And possibly get to Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn sometime this year too, coming up. And those are, and everything else has to be just sort of shorter. If I can find a bunch of standalones, because like I said, I listen to mostly Lit RPG on audio. And besides that, my only plan for all of next year in audio is Lit RPG and Discworld. That's it. Because if Discworld,
that'll fill your dance card every time.
That's it, right? So it's like, and I already know the big books that I've got coming up. So now it's like, I'm going to be on a quest for standalone books.
The stuff to tuck in the edges.
For sure.
I've got a few days left of this month. I can read that.
For sure. And you know, like a really great one for me on that, even though it's still dense and not overly challenging, but makes you think, is Guy Gavriel K. And I've been able to sprinkle a few of those in as standalones, which I just fantastic. I'm hoping to be able to, you know, rock out 2 or 3 of those next year too. So, we'll see.
Like who does standalones is Charles DeLint.
Yes, and that's old school urban fantasy too.
Old school urban fantasy. I've only read a couple, and I enjoyed them very much. I like his writing. It tends to be a bit more sort of Portal or secondary world. It's closer tied to our world, but also more fantastical than, say, an urban fantasy.
Sure. So, do you consider it urban fantasy? Because a lot of people do with Charles DeLint, and
only because there's usually a significant part of the book that is very definitely in our world, with normal
Okay.
everyday people.
Got it.
The fantastic elements tend to be very fantastic, where it's
Sure.
like literally like an old-fashioned fairy portal sort of type
Right.
thing, where you're going from the mundane to the very fantastic.
I have
So,
to I have to put him on the list. And the reason why
mm,
I'm asking is because so I did this lit RPG starter guide about a year ago, and it's done really
yeah,
well on the channel. And my intention is to do an urban fantasy starters guide as well. And the
nice.
name Charles DeLint keeps coming up, and I
Yeah.
haven't read any yet. And that's why that video has not been made
Mhm.
yet, is because I'm
They're
waiting to read.
meatier than a
Yeah,
lot of,
I'm waiting to
urban
read it
in that yeah,
to
just
put.
the not as light as a lot of what I would call
Yeah,
urban fantasy.
sure.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for that one, and then I
Mm.
want to be able to do that starters guide, and because I think people like starters guides,
Oh, hell
especially
yes,
new people
because
coming in.
fantasy's freaking scary, man.
Right,
Because they're all theories, and you're like, I don't even know where to start."
right.
And then you find the poor souls who find fantasy and start with Malathon, and you're like,
Well,
"Oh,
that's
honey,
right.
no
That's
wonder you're
right.
struggling."
Right. And it's like God
I
bless the people.
literally had that with my doctor this year. Literally. I talked to
Wow.
her one week, and I'm like, she reads." And I was like, "Oh, you should try some of these authors." And then next time I went to see her, I said, "Oh, how did you go?" She goes, "Oh, my girlfriend's into this, and I picked up The Gardens of the Moon." And I went, "Oh, honey." And she went, "It's okay then that I'm struggling?" I said, "Honey, put it down. You're not ready
Yeah.
for that one yet.
Yeah. You don't start with
You're not there
calculus.
yet."
You don't start with calculus till you know arithmetic. And
Yeah.
you know,
But there are so many that, unless you are already familiar with the genre,
mhm,
are going to just pull you in the wrong direction in terms of what you think fantasy is.
right.
And without starter guides, so
Yeah.
many people are missing that opportunity to find things they truly love
Yeah.
because they've just not found the door. And yeah, so I'm all in for the starter guides.
Cool.
Bloody good on you.
Cool,
And it
cool,
is
cool.
why I'm working on a video for Mercedes Lackey, which,
Cool.
while she's not heavy duty fantasy, she's what I would call middle grade YA level in terms of depth of darkness and themes.
Okay.
It's much lighter, much lighter fantasy. But there's, like Discworld, there's over 40 of them. Where the hell do you start?
Right. Absolutely.
So there's
Yeah.
that to come.
Well, I like, but
These are
like
the things I like doing.
15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I picked up The Color of Magic, and
And it
I
didn't work for you.
and it was horrible.
Yeah,
And then about 6 or 7 years ago, I picked it up again, and it was still horrible.
still horrible.
And it's the
Yeah.
only book I've ever DNF'd, and I've DNF'd it twice.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And I have no problem with that whatsoever as a massive Discworld fan, because I know that's not where you start Discworld.
it's just
And if
isn't
you
where you
don't
start.
know, of
Yeah,
course you start at the first one.
yeah.
I mean, because that's
That's
what
where
you
you
do.
go. That's where you go. And it's got a great name, right? And the original
It really
cover
does.
was so cool. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is gonna be, for me. And I came at it having read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in junior high school, and I felt like this was gonna be the fantasy equivalent
Yeah.
of Hitchhiker's Guide, and it wasn't funny, and I just didn't care. And I
And
was like,
yeah.
it's just like, yeah. And I just assumed, literally until I found BookTube, that
Yeah.
Discworld was not for me. In that,
Yeah.
okay, well, I
And
tried.
that's exactly why I am so anti people beginning Discworld at the
Yeah,
beginning. If
yeah,
you know it's not indicative of what Discworld will become, okay,
hmm,
that's fine. Because if you read it and you're disappointed, that's not going to spoil the fact you're going to keep going. But a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They
right,
want to know, how good is this? And if
yeah,
it's not good to start with, they're not going to continue.
right,
So I want to start them somewhere in the series that goes, this writer is worth my time,
yeah.
and then choose for themselves where to go from there.
I wish the
And yeah,
publisher would have done a better, clearer job on Discworld of explaining that it's all interconnected, but there are specific arcs. And,
yeah,
this arc is this, and this arc is this, and this arc is that. And you can
because if you
start
don't know,
anywhere you want, right? Because they left it
and
to
you don't
us
even
as
have
the
to start at a beginning.
right. Especially because, if there's 30 or 40 books out there, and
Yeah,
people believe, it would only make sense that you start at the first book and that's just how
Mhm.
every other series works.
Exactly.
And
And
I
it's
think that their publisher didn't do an adequate job of explaining that's not how Discworld works. This is one section, this is another section.
yeah.
Whichever seems most interesting to you is where we think you should start. And
I think because they were all pretty much standalones within Discworld to
yeah,
begin with, that
yeah,
it's one of those things that have grown with the publisher and of course the audience has come with. So if you began at the beginning with the author and the publisher, you learned that at the same time they did.
got it.
And afterward, it's, well, how do we
Yeah,
change our direction now?
right.
And again, if you haven't found BookTube, if you don't know to look
No
for that
idea.
information, you don't know that you need to be aware that there's a
It-
change in the way it's written. You don't know that there are bunches of characters you're not going to see for half a dozen books.
yeah,
You, how would you know? How
yeah,
would you know that unlike every other fantasy series out there, this one does not build on itself? You
right.
don't need to have read the one
That's
before
right.
to read this one and have it
That's
make sense.
right.
It has a standalone plot.
That's right. And we're
It's
not
completely
informed that
foreign.
we're not informed of that outside of BookTube, really. And because when would you ever go look at a series that has 30 books and decide to pick up book 16 first?
Exactly. I mean, how would you? Why? I mean, really, why would you?
It wouldn't. Yeah.
You'd be insane. Except that for Discworld, you totally can. The book I've said to you that you need to read when you've done with the watch is book like, I don't know, 31, 32.
Right.
And yet it's my favorite place to recommend people to start
Awesome.
because it's just so great.
I love it.
And you don't need to have read the previous 30.
Yeah,
But it's,
I'm all in on Discworld at this point. And at
yeah.
some point I will go back probably after everything and go back and read the first, section cuz okay, now
Well,
I
yeah, it's
understand
interesting
sort of
because you can
what it
see where
is.
it came from, and you can see the humor then because you're like, "Oh, that's where that came from. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I get it."
Right.
But yeah, it's tricky. Um, this one I only read Guards, and Men at Arms. Nobby is your favorite so far. Oh, Dan, Nobby, anybody who has to carry a certificate proving they're human,
Yeah.
it's got to be an interesting character. And you learn lots of things about Nobby as the series progresses. And it's it factors differently for a lot of people. And I've started to explain it to people in terms of, well, what kind of fantasy do you like? What are the
Mhm.
things you like? Because the death books tend to be philosophical. The watch books talk about social injustice. The witches talk about the power of words and how to manipulate people. The Industrial Revolution books talk about changes to society and how change can be confronting to people. So rather than talking about what Discworld is, I'm like, okay, these are the things in this particular subgroup of Discworld books to latch it on to what you're already reading. And yeah, they're funny. You mentioned that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy you enjoy. I love Hitchhiker's Guide, and
Mhm.
I used to have the radio cassettes of the original BBC
Oh, cool.
run of the show, which was very different to the books because they were being written concurrently, and what worked or didn't work on the radio did or didn't make it into the book. So it's an interesting thing to look into. But I really hate people who compare the two because they're very different.
Oh yeah.
Hitchhiker's Guide is designed to be funny.
Yeah.
That's its purpose, is to be
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Discworld is a vehicle using humor to say important things. And
Absolutely.
that's a different thing
Yeah.
entirely.
You know who Terry Pratchett reminds me of is the late comedian George Carlin, where
Yes.
he's kind of like
Oh,
angry in general, but he's using
yes.
humor to show how stupid everything is. And
Yes.
you'll laugh your
Yes.
ass off, but yeah.
100%, Brian. That's a perfect, absolutely perfect comparison. That because
Yay, I did
you're
something good.
exactly right. No, it couldn't be any more perfect. It was said in a eulogy for Terry Pratchett. People expected to meet this twinkly-eyed, cheerful old man, and instead they're getting an angry writer who is using humor to make his point.
Mhm.
And that as soon as you hear the words, he was angry, you see it. And I could see it for years in his writing. I was like, I knew he was an angry man. He was saying so many things with passion about the things that we as people do without thinking. And that comes across. So for the number of people who read it and are like, oh, it's funny, I'm like, you have missed the point.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
more than, yes,
Well,
okay, if all you got from it was that it was funny, then okay, I'm glad you had fun.
yeah.
There's more. There is
Yeah.
so much more.
It's so, being funny is hard, and being clever is even harder. You know, anybody can put a wig on and disco-fy people, but to be clever is harder.
Clever is matching the candle accurately.
Clever is matching the candle. That is true. But
so,
yeah.
But you're right, it is a tricky thing. And quite often we see and we hear other booktubers talk about it. They're trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And that's a bad thing. That's a negative thing. Because it is. When you can see the effort going into funny, it's not funny. It's not an effort for Terry. He can write things, and I can have read them multiple times, and I will suddenly still get a joke that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Because he's just funny. It's in the words, it's in the writing. And you can read them time and time again and still catch new things.
Yeah. I mean, and some
how could I not have seen that before?
Yeah. I think that some people are just naturally funny people.
Yes.
Even if they're like curmudgeon, like he may have been, or George Carlin may have been, they're just funny people. I was watching Man Carrying Thing on BookTube the other day. He's just a funny person.
Yes.
And he understands his dry humor works extremely well for his audience, but just having dry humor is not enough. You have to be a funny person to begin with. And he certainly is. So yeah, big fan of the Discworld. Can't wait to jump back in tonight. It's going to be quite some fun, I think.
I think a lot of it too helps when, like ourselves, you've got a really solid grounding in fantasy. So you're able to see a lot of the things that Terry is poking fun of. And he was a remarkably well-read man. And there are references to genres outside of fantasy all over the place. There's one of the City Watch books leans really heavily, and you wouldn't know it unless you know it. It leans really heavily into Russian literature. And if you didn't know that, it doesn't matter. It's still funny.
Right. Lots of different levels.
It adds a layer to that humor that isn't there otherwise. And just
speechless.
No surprise to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally call him our generation's Shakespeare. The man plays with words. There's a joy in the way he plays with words that comes across through the page. He's having fun playing with words and making them dance for him, basically. And I'm like, you make those words dance. It's incomparable with anything else in fantasy. We can say Cad Williams, similar to Hobbes, similar to Lois Bujold, similar to, we can sort of group styles of writing and feeling.
He's certainly unique.
There's nothing like Terry Pratchett. There just isn't.
Yeah.
It is very unique, but it's also very confronting because there's so many. If you don't know which one is the doorway for you, and it can be that specific, you're never going to go in there and have fun.
Yeah.
Because you have to be in the right frame of mind for that first one. And that first one, if that first one hits you right, you've opened the door to Discworld.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be fine with the absurd because, I mean, it's satire, it's absurdism, it's all of the things comparing to our lives on this desk, being carried by a turtle with elephants and all of that.
There's a wonderful spin-off series from Discworld, The Science of Discworld. And in the, I think, early 90s, you'll remember, there was a whole big lot of stuff where it would be like The Science of Star Wars.
Sure.
And it would be a book explaining, using our science, how Star Wars worked and how Star Trek worked. And when Science of Discworld came out, it's very different. They read like a novel. You get a chapter of Discworld. And the very first of the Science of Discworld books opens with Rincewind, who is the very first character, if you've read from the beginning, and he has caused an accident. Strange that. There's been an explosion of magical energy, and it has created in its own little biosphere a round universe that runs on rules about circles. And so you get a chapter of Rincewind creating Roundworld. Then you get a chapter on the creation of the universe using actual science that explains the things that Rincewind has just discovered. And then we go back to Rincewind. And now, oh, look, all of these things are changing. Oh, there's a bigger one forming in there. And then we get, this is how the planets were created. And then we get Rincewind observe something about what's happening in the round world.
That's cool.
And then we get a chapter describing it. And it's all very layman's terms.
Yeah.
This is how it happens. And then we start to poke fun at it. Then we start to go, one of the other wizards has poked a finger in and gone, what's happening there? You know, this big white bearded old man poking. Oh, and now things are alive in there. What did you do? I don't know. But now there's life, and now it's evolving. And now it's evolving differently because another of the wizards has poked something. And now we're going to talk about evolution. So tying actual science in with Discworld humor. So you still get that Discworld vibe and Discworld jokes and Discworld storyline. And then you get some very clever scientists using Discworld style language to describe actual world science. They are among my favorite.
That's got to be so fun for those authors to write those too, right? He
made really good friends with those.
Yeah.
And he had a fascination with technology. He was a tinkerer. He was somebody that had bits of radios and bits of guitars and bits of technology. And he was always he built his own computers. He built his own external memory drives. He built his own stuff. He was a tinkerer.
Yeah.
And he understood really instinctively, I think, that idea that sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic.
Yes.
And so for him, that's what fantasy was. It was another way of explaining what's happening when you don't know. The Science of Discworld books, seriously.
All right. I will take a look.
On your Evergreen.
On my
standalones. You can fit them in wherever.
That's right. I said I wanted standalones. There you go.
Yeah. So and I love the wizards. The wizards are great. The Wizards of the Unseen.
And I do like the combo of fiction and nonfiction. It sounds like those books have.
Well, it makes it much less daunting. I mean, I've said it before. I didn't finish high school, and I didn't go to university.
Mm-hmm.
But blowing my own trumpet, I'm quite a clever person.
Oh yeah, you definitely are.
But I don't have the language always to express what I'm thinking or what I mean, because I just didn't have the opportunities to learn the frameworks for those things.
Right.
So the Science of Discworld was just like a gift, because I want to know about these things, and it's telling me in words I can follow, I can understand, and I genuinely feel that I learned a lot from those books.
Awesome.
And yet, if you weren't really interested and just wanted more Discworld, that's fine too.
Yeah.
It works on both levels. Wonderful.
Love it.
You know,
love it.
Something that works both ways. You really can't. But I'm going to change track completely here.
Okay.
I say track, not even on tracks. Okay, we're going to head in a different direction.
Okay.
I wanted to ask how your flask business is going, because that's the only business of yours that I know that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that you are a man with fingers in pies.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of your pies.
Sure. The flask business is going okay. For anybody who doesn't know, I have a product called Bell Flask. So instead of Belltube, it's Bell Flask. If you go to bellflask.com, you will see it. And if you decide to buy something, it will link you to our Amazon stuff. And I have been going through the ringer with Amazon for the last 2.5 weeks. It's been grueling on my mind. The long
Mm.
story is that they yanked down all my advertising. Their bot did, and said you can't advertise this product, but Amazon has a very similar product, even though I do have 4 patents on mine, and they can advertise theirs all they like, as long as all of our competitors. So it's been a back and forth, and I suspect it will wind up being legal to something, and I'm
Oh,
sure it will get resolved, and these things always do. But it's a pain in the butt. It's affected sales tremendously for the holiday season, and it's just aggravation that I really didn't need. But
mhm.
when you deal with Amazon, and authors will tell you this as well, it's just they only care about themselves.
Yeah,
And
it's a
so
juggernaut.
yeah, and so I've really been working the flask business more on the corporate merchandising side, where I did a deal with Jameson Irish Whiskey, where we
Ooh,
printed their Jameson logo on our flasks and they hand them out as promotional items. So rather than just t-shirts and hats and
nice.
keychains and all this stuff, they give somebody a legitimate product. And what I had told the people at Jameson was saying, look, even if people have water in there, or
Yeah, they're
Jack
still carrying your
Daniels,
brand around.
they're Jack Daniels fans, not Jameson. What do you care what's in there? They're walking around a golf course or on a cruise
With
ship
your
or
brand.
wherever that it says your brand. So they really like that. I've been very much focused on creating marketing materials for to turn Bell Flask more into a promotional products,
Nice.
thing. Yes, they are all 100% metal free. You can roll them up. You can reuse them. You will like this dairy. On one side, they've got measurements in freedom units, and on the other side, it's all in metrics.
Nice.
So you know exactly how much is in there. It holds 16 ounces. And
Wow.
like I said, I got 4 patents on them. And
That's awesome,
so
Brian.
I've got that going. I'm working on turning this into um what do you call it? More of the corporate side of things. And
Well, you want it to be
so,
that regular sort of income stream, don't you? Where you can go,
well,
okay, it's coming
it's
up
it's
Christmas,
it's
corporate events are going to happen.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
much bigger. It's much bigger sales numbers selling
Oh,
to
yeah.
a company. It's far easier to do it because
Hmm.
I'm making one sale instead of dealing with the Amazon machine.
Yes.
And Amazon is highly unpredictable. And Amazon also looks at everybody who is, I can say it no better than this. As great as it is to be a buyer on Amazon, and it truly is, they're convenient. They do, they'll take anything back at any time. I mean, you could go buy a scented candle, burn the whole thing down to zero, and send it back
Yeah.
saying you
Pretty
didn't
much.
like the smell, and they'll give you your money back. So as a buyer, they're wonderful. They are equal and opposite if you are a seller. They are horrible.
Wow.
And my plan for 2025 is to remain on Amazon because we have
Not be
four,
reliant.
yeah, we have 1,400 reviews, right? I have
Nice.
a 5-star rating of 82% of all of those ratings are 5 stars, which
That's
is,
amazing.
yeah, it's pretty
Like, that's
incredible.
phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And up until they pulled our advertising down, we were
Wow.
consistently in the top 15 in the drinking flask category in all of the United States.
Yeah.
So it was working the way that I thought it could work. It's just they changed the rules. So
Ugh.
I'm going to stay there, but I'm going to find better ways to market the product. Other things, like you said, other things in the pie. I'm very much contemplating starting another YouTube channel, um,
Mm.
but it wouldn't have anything to do with books at all. And and I think that I've learned far more in the last year on how to make a video and how to get lights going and how a microphone works. And I'd never opened up a video editing piece of software until, a year ago, last
Mhm.
month. And so this has been just an unbelievably great learning experience for me that I feel like there's other stuff besides books that I could be using the platform for in a broader way, not
Oh,
changing
yeah.
Belltube at all, keeping Belltube, but just expanding, especially if I can do some of this promotional business outside of Amazon, literally one sale that I make there, it might take me a month of Amazon work to do. So time would free up to do more interesting entrepreneurial things on YouTube as I learn
You get
more.
far more of a, what's the word? Your cost profit
Yeah.
ratio improves
Yeah.
tremendous if you're not then reliant on this behemoth that can
Right.
turn around and sleep you
And
down
just
at a
say, right.
moment's notice.
And literally, I mean, and Derry, the crazy thing is, and I won't bother everybody who's watching this, but this same issue has happened 4 times with Amazon in the last 2 years, and they've always resolved it. In the longest that ever went was about 48 hours. The quickest they ever resolved it was 45 minutes. And they've always agreed with me that, hey, no, you're not in, you're totally compliant. You're fine. For whatever
Yeah.
reason, this thing is taking forever. And it's
Mhm.
just sort of in the wrong month that you don't want, I mean, there go the holiday sales.
Exactly.
And the other part of it, to be honest with you, is that so prior to the nightclub, my whole background was in flexible packaging, and I know packaging in and out. It's why we have the patents. It's why one of the layers inside of our flask is the equivalent of a barrier against outside air and moisture as glass. So you could put wine in there, you could put expensive whiskeys, you could put whatever, and it's not going to go bad. It's essentially the same level of protection against the outside elements as glass, air, all of that. And so I know this stuff backwards and forwards, and it's like, all right, why am I letting Amazon,
Yeah.
control
Have
me
an impact.
in this manner? But here's the problem. So because I have this very specific, detailed, intimate knowledge of the flexible packaging industry, there's not one single company in the United States that can make my product from start to finish all under one roof. There's only a couple places in the world that can do it. Japan can do it, but it's extraordinarily expensive because it's just the costs of everything in Japan are very high. So it would be cost prohibitive. And I'm already the most expensive flexible flask on Amazon. So I don't have room there. The other place is China. And what used to be before I had the bar, I would compete against China in manufacturing packaging all day long, but it was so easy for me because they made crap. Their goods were cheap.
Yeah,
they
that's
were
right.
cheap, but you get what you pay for, and they would fall apart. And in something like this, where you've got liquid going inside and you're telling people to put it in their purse or put it in their jeans pocket or whatever.
That's right. And then you
don't want to puncture this thing. You don't want, this thing needs to be robust and durable. And 30 years ago, China was not capable of making that. Well, fast forward to today, some of the most world's advanced manufacturing facilities are in China. And with the incoming administration now threatening to double the tariffs on everything coming from China, I have a real problem because, well, yeah, the tariff from China used to be 3% prior to when the guy who's coming in was there before. It was 3%. He changed it to 28%. So that's a lot, right?
Holy moly!
Right. And the last president, who's still in office, ran on a platform saying he was going to remove that and bring it back to 3%. Well, here's the thing. Once a government starts collecting tax money,
they're not going to stop.
They don't like changing their mind, even if they promise.
It's not going to go backward.
So he left it alone.
Inflation does not go down.
Yeah. Now he left it alone. And the guy who's coming back is threatening to move it to 54%, or at the very least 38%. And I don't have any more room to start raising. Yeah, I don't have room to start raising prices anymore. And it's just, again, like you said, a lot of things in my entrepreneurial mind going on. And I want to try to do things that are a little bit more within my control than all of a sudden finding out that this tariff is, when I'm paying
one change and
boom, there goes all the profit margin. It's just a tariff.
Wow.
And when the government says, hey, we're going to make tariffs to punish those other countries, they're not. The other
No,
countries
they're
aren't the
punishing.
ones,
Yeah.
they don't pay for the tariff. It's the people that are importing goods because they can't
Mm.
get them. In
And
look,
that's the thing is, if you could do it locally, you would.
if I could be, oh my God, are you kidding me? If I could get it locally and not be on a
If you were
13
able to go
hour,
American made, made at home, supporting local businesses.
absolutely. Yeah, of course it
Hello?
would. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because when I started doing this, I still had the nightclub and I was used to being up till 4 in the morning, which worked
Mhm.
because
Oh, your time zones. Yeah.
China's 13 hours ahead of me. So, that was like just no problem. But
Yeah.
now I'm 5 years removed almost from the bar business and I don't want a 13-hour time
No.
difference in business. And it's just, yeah, it's kind of foolish that people would think, well, the country that the tariffs are being imposed on are
They're
the
not
ones
gonna do
paying
that.
for it. It's not. It's the small guys. And the big people, the big huge companies that donate millions of dollars to Congress on both sides and to the
No, they're
presidents
not
and
the
all
ones
of
being
that,
affected by
they
those
can
tariffs.
they can either afford it, or what they do is they lobby the government to reclassify their products, because there's always a certain classification that come from these heavily tariffed
There's
countries
always something. There's a way through.
that are exempted from it, right?
Yeah.
And it's never going to be the small guy like me that's
Mhm.
exempted from it, but it will be the trillion-dollar global companies that are importing to
Yeah.
the United States. They'll never pay a penny in an increased tariff. So it's I
Yeah.
have to, because I'm not gainfully employed for a company
Yeah.
that will take care of me, which I don't believe in anyway.
No, nobody does
Uh,
that anymore.
I'd be a
I
terrible
mean,
employee. I would literally be the worst employee. I've worked for places. I used to work at the Marriott Hotel, and God, I was a terrible employee. I was the
yeah, because
worst.
you expect to be treated with a certain amount of respect, and you expect to be compensated properly for the
Oh
things that you
yeah,
do, and
it's
they
just,
don't like that. They want uninformed employees. They want
yeah. I
people
mean,
who don't know what their rights are,
I'm
because then they can just trample all over them and nobody
yeah,
tells them.
and I'm not one to just
Sorry,
keep.
that was my soapbox
But
moment.
that's okay. I mean, I'm just not one to keep my head down and shut up and do my job.
No, I'm not even.
I'm horrible at it. If I see a
Okay.
more efficient way or a better way to doing it, I will want to do it that way. And
Yeah,
most of the time
because
that
just because we've always done it that way is not
right,
a good enough
right.
reason.
Rocking the boat is generally frowned on in corporate America. And I know
Yeah.
me, I need to be able to work the hours that I want. Now it's interesting because as a self-employed person, I work 7 days a week. My sister, like 2 or 3 months ago, had to beg me to take a day off. I
Yeah.
never take days off, and I count some of the stuff that I do on YouTube as working days because I put effort into
Yep.
it. I'm
Yeah,
not just filming a video, hitting the upload button, and calling it a day. There's
that's right.
people that do that. They take a whole hour and that's it. And mine can be a 5 to 7 hour experience, which I thought was long until I watched Bookborn say she could put 30 hours into a video, and watched
I will
Vera put
do
in,
that.
I don't know how many dozens and dozens of hours into her new Witcher video. So my
Yeah,
5 or 6 is really not that big
you're
of a
doing good.
deal, but so I'm just like, I have to have a lot of different things going on. Hi, Joanna.
Lovely to see your face.
That's the second
But yeah,
time I've seen Joanna today. Once,
well, there you go.
once not live, and in once in video. So that's excellent.
There you go. It's lovely
Absolutely.
to see.
So I've got to answer your question in my very long-winded entrepreneurial way. Yes, I do have other things happening. I
Fingers and
ex-
ties.
yeah, I think that there's I
You're not a
have.
man to stand still. I know that much.
I'm not, and it was funny because we talked about Jimmy earlier, and I really
Yeah.
look up to him as somebody that is really in my opinion, in our side of BookTube, he's the best one-on-one interviewer in our whole thing,
He's
and
wonderful.
I think I'm getting
Wonderful, wonderful.
better at it, but he's really the guy that I think has this down, so much so that I ask him I must be a pain in the ass because I'm Discord questioning him all the time. This, and this. And I had floated an idea of a video podcast that I might do. And just like, yes or no, is this a good idea? Will it work? And he's like, capital letters, yes. So I'm like, okay, I trust you. So yeah,
Nice.
things are in the
Well, I'm
works, I
glad.
hope.
Well, you know that I'm fully going to support you as much as I can, and I'll push
Awesome.
people in your direction as much as possible.
Well, you've been like, you're like one of my favorite people to watch videos and to see on, sprints and in live traps and just the chat. Cause you do wonders, and we talked about this when you came on my show. You do wonders for people's mental health and attitude through the stuff that you've learned through your own challenges. And it absolutely, I mean, find me a booktuber that doesn't love dairy. It's like, it's not possible. At least they won't fess up to it. But
No,
I mean, trust me, there's plenty of people that hate my face. No one hates dairy. So it's like, you are one of the brightest spots that I have found since coming on here, for sure, because you are so supportive of the people that you like their channels, in the people in the community that you like their input, even if they don't have a channel, but they're regulars in a chat. You are so positive, right? You're just like a breath of fresh air into this world. Yeah, exactly. See? Griffin, you've been in timeout and like all day long with various.
Fair, it's been self-imposed. I haven't had to do anything.
That's true. I mean, I just wanted to say that, even though we talked about that on my channel, because I mean, yeah, you sometimes the people that spend a lot of their time brightening other people's day don't hear it back themselves. No, so I just wanted to make sure that while we're talking today, you hear that back for yourself, for sure.
Thank you. And and you're right. I don't know, and that is my own mental health journey.
Yeah.
But part of it too, I remember there was it was one of those things that you do in therapy where they talk about, what can you do around yourself? And I began to notice very quickly that a conversation when you're social with somebody, with a group of people, if there's a group of people standing around and the conversation turns mean, people are so fast to jump on board until somebody says something different. And as soon as they're given the option to be nice, people will be nice.
Yeah.
My thing is, no, if I start out this chat with niceness and saying hi to everybody, the chances of anybody in that chat beginning to turn that vibe reduces massively.
Absolutely.
Because it just doesn't get in. And so if you very deliberately choose to look at any interaction with a way to explain a negative one, like, okay, that person was horrible. Okay, they may have had a really bad day yesterday.
Right.
And all you have to do is suggest to other people, there might be a reason for it. We can overlook it. People are happy to do that instead of jumping on and going, hey, that was horrible.
Yeah.
Just allow, and I say this to myself, and I say this to other people who are having a rant. It's like, that person didn't get out of bed today intending to make your life hard.
Right.
That person didn't get out of bed going, right, I'm going to be an absolute dirtbag to everybody I encounter.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Not even master villains.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. So if you encounter someone and that's how they're treating you, it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, it's their deal.
Nothing at all.
Yep.
You just have to go, okay.
Yeah.
Well, me getting angry about it isn't actually helping. It's just adding to the shit in the world.
That is true.
And there's quite enough of that.
There's enough of that already, right? We don't need to get dragged down into the muck of it. That's for sure.
No, and it's very much the, bad things happen because people don't say anything. So say something.
Yep. That's what I try to do when I can.
One of my favorite interactions came a couple of years ago during the pandemic. And it was an individual distanced queue to go into the supermarket. And there was, one checkout operator and then an empty operator and then a checkout operator. And the person adjacent to me was not being nice to the young girl at the checkout and was just being a pain. And I turned around after he was being dealt with, and I just said to her quite loudly, deliberately, "That's okay, honey. That's your asshole of the day, out of the way."
Yeah,
Because she was
absolutely.
getting really upset. She was really young,
Yeah.
and I thought, sweetheart. And this guy, he's massive. He turned around and he said, "Are you calling me an asshole?" And I
Mhm.
just looked at him and went, "Yes, yes, I
Mhm.
am."
Yeah.
And he was just flabbergasted. He was just
Yeah.
like,
People
"Did you
aren't
not
called out
see
very
that
often.
you're
Yeah.
being an ass?" Like,
Yeah.
come on, dude.
It's
And
true.
I felt amazing for days after that,
Yeah.
for
She
calling
probably did
somebody out,
too.
for
She
being
probably was.
mean,
Yeah. It's
because
true.
he was just being mean to this
Yeah.
girl because I don't know why, not my problem,
Who
but you don't
knows?
need to spread it.
It's true. That
No.
is true.
And yeah, that's kind of my own personal vigilantism.
Yes.
I will
We'll take
call
it.
out the asshole at the checkout.
Excellent. If I ever run
But
into
it
that
was
again,
so
if I ever
empowering.
run into that again,
Oh,
I'm FaceTiming you. I'll be like, "Okay,
exactly.
you're gonna get yelled
It
at from
feels
New
so
Zealand
good.
right now, dude." Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it just felt so good. And I've kind of carried that with me since then because it just feels good.
Yeah. I
When
love
you're
it.
having a bad day and somebody stands up for you, how
Mhm.
grateful are you for that person? When you
Yeah.
just don't have it in yourself to defend yourself,
Yeah.
but
It's
somebody
true.
else goes, "Hey,
Yeah.
don't say that to him."
It's true.
And you're like, "Actually, yeah, that wasn't okay that they said that to me."
Yeah.
You know, be out there,
I
defend
I
the
agree.
people.
I've
It
done
doesn't
that
happen.
as a former nightclub owner. I have done that many, 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 many times. Um,
And it feels good.
yeah, you're standing up for people that otherwise might not stand up for themselves, and
Yeah.
it's just, that's me. I'm not afraid, Now, then again, I also had very, very large security guards standing behind me the whole time. I was
True.
I was letting people know what they could go do with themselves.
And I
So,
generally don't push back against drunk people. So,
yeah, you know, I mean, it's not like
you choose your moments wisely.
I didn't have backup, but yeah,
Yeah, you don't have to be out there being silly.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
choose your moment. It's spreading the goodness isn't a hard thing. And we it somehow is something we're told isn't worth our time. And it occurred to me a few years ago that why?
It's
Why
true.
shouldn't I say to that person, they're actually really beautiful?
Hmm.
That person probably spent hours putting their hair and makeup together this morning. Nobody's going to say to them today, all day, "You look beautiful." Why not? They look beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah,
I did that to a woman in a bus stop not long ago, and her face lit up and made her even more beautiful. I was like,
absolutely. Yeah.
she just,
I Yeah, I used to compliment people on something that I know that they had to do. Like, it could be earrings, or it
yeah,
could be a necklace, or it could be a cool
something they've
ring,
chosen.
or it could be
Yeah.
just something that is not, that they, like you said, they chose themselves. Oh, your glass frames are really awesome, or whatever they are.
Well, this
Just to,
particular woman was putting lipstick on in a mirror. So
yeah,
I was like, no, she
yeah,
cared.
there you go.
But
No,
you're right. It's something they've chosen. It's like that color that you're wearing.
hmm,
Fabulous.
yeah,
Yeah.
very
It,
cool.
it, it's uh, it, people go outside of social interaction norms, usually only in reaction to bad stuff. So somebody's having a bad day, they'll be shouting out somewhere in public, being aggressive, being mean. But when something really good happens, we tend to keep that stuff very private. We have our good moments with
Hmm.
family, with friends. So those really joyous things that happen in life tend to be private. But the
Yeah,
negative stuff tends to sort of seep out into the neighborhood.
yeah,
Families are rowing or a couple are having a foul fight and everyone down the street can hear them, slamming car doors and shouting. And it's an awfully unbalanced thing. So why don't we take some of the good stuff and share it outside? It
well,
doesn't cost anything,
right. Well, we as
but we're told
humans,
not to talk to strangers.
we as humans are capable of doing it, but we're also living in this sort of 24/7 social
Yeah.
media news cycle, and peace and calm and love doesn't sell ads, right? It doesn't get
No, it
ratings.
doesn't.
It doesn't. The negative stuff, or the ranting and all of that, that attracts viewers, which then gets sold
Mhm.
as advertising, and there's profits, and that's just sort of the nature of the environment that we find ourselves in. So it's important, I think, to notice that and say, okay, well, I know that this is the environment that I'm sort of
Yep.
in. How can I be the voice within that environment to say, hey, there's an alternative, and
Yeah.
we don't have to keep the happy spots just in our little bubble. And
Yeah.
and that's part of why I do what I do on the channel. And that's why,
Yeah.
I try to come across, look, I mean, every time I film a video, I'm not in the greatest mood possible. That would be a lie to say so. It would be totally
Mhm.
inauthentic.
Yeah.
But I know that there's some people that are watching that could really use an uplift. And that
Damn
is
straight.
part of what my channel is about. Is it's not just books. It's the channel is not, it is a booktube channel, but books are just a part of it. And
Here's a framework we've built this community around.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
face it.
My
You know,
I look at my channel as more of a kind of a one-on-one conversation channel that does use books as the vehicle, but to try to put a smile on people's faces through entertainment, or
Mhm.
just like one for the roads that I've been there before too, where
Yeah.
maybe other people are at right now. And it's not like going to therapy. It's not like you can, there's a difference between watching one of my quick one for the roads versus watching somebody like Jared Henderson, who has a PhD in philosophy. You could
Oh,
really break down the meat of the matter, where
yep.
mine's more dime store psychology sometimes, but sometimes that's just all a person needs, and sometimes it's all they
It's also
want.
just all they can cope with.
Right.
Yeah.
A
When
quick,
you're in the
a,
hole,
a, a quick 3 minutes at the end of a video,
uh-huh.
that to go, hey, you know what? Hey, I felt better for watching this video.
Yeah.
So, you
Oh,
know,
absolutely. I mean, anyone who's watched my channel for any length of time knows I haven't had a good year. Started
yeah,
with lead poisoning in the
I
house, and it was
remember you
still
had
the
a I mean,
consequence. It's not been
yeah,
a great year
yeah,
mentally.
but
The
you don't
one for the road snippets
yeah,
are far more digestible when
yeah,
you're in a negative headspace.
yeah,
You can watch the deep philosophical discussions when you're in a good headspace, where you can
absolutely.
take it in and give it thought and spend time pondering. You don't have the capacity for that when you're in the hole. When you're in the hole, you need to be reminded that people actually do love you,
Hmm.
people like you, and what you're doing is hard,
Hmm.
and that's okay.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
stay just stay here until tomorrow,
that's right.
and we can talk again tomorrow. Because Scarlett O'Hara, best quote ever, tomorrow is another day. And
Absolutely.
some things if you keep putting off till tomorrow, they'll go away.
It's true. I mean, if we think about,
Actually pointless.
if somebody asks you, 5 years ago today at this exact time of the day, what was your biggest problem? You don't
Exactly.
you don't
You don't know.
remember. And that's not just 5 years. It could be 10 years. It could be last week.
It
So
really can.
they do go away,
And they
and we
were
magnify them.
and it was stopping you from getting out of bed or going out or interacting with people. And yet you don't remember what that was,
Hmm. Absolutely.
but it was
At the
affecting your
time,
health in a
it
profound
was
way.
just world rocking, right? I mean, it's like the stuff with Amazon. I won't, as soon as they fix it, I won't care.
That's right.
And
It's
I
done,
will
it's
have,
dealt with.
and that's sort of why I'm like not. It's why I'm able to even have a conversation with you right now, because
Yeah,
it's like, if I was not aware of how things work in terms of not only them, but just when problems pass, they kind of go away and don't miss, the forest for the trees, don't miss the opportunities to talk to friends and things like that, even when you have some crap going on in the background or in your life or in your career or whatever it is, because it'd be very easy for me to go, God, my brain is so on this business issue right now. I can't give Dairy my full attention. I should reschedule this when I'm feeling great.
yeah,
Those issues will go away, but the time that I got to spend with you today would have been lost.
Makes the day
And
so much better.
yeah,
Just saying.
absolutely. Oh, you're the best. You're the best for mental health in the world. I was told John that
Ah,
the other day. I was like, you know what? I haven't gone on Dairy's channel. I'll get off that thing. I'll be in a great mood. So yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
good. And genuinely good. I mean, again, I'm not in the best mental health space. This time with BookTube, with all of these lovely people in chat,
Hmm.
because so many of these lovely people in chat are here every time I go live. And
Hmm.
seriously, you guys, that's amazing. And thank you.
Yeah,
These people they're my friends.
yeah,
And this is what I know will keep me from dangerous
yeah,
levels of thinking,
yeah.
because these people are on the other side of the world,
That's right. Yeah,
and and they're in my chat,
that's right.
on my
Yeah,
channel.
yeah,
I gave myself a hell of a fright the other day. I don't often look at my channel on YouTube in terms of as a channel. I just go
sure.
in there to put a video up, and I have over 600 subs, Brian.
That's awesome.
When the fuck did that happen?
And you
Yeah,
know what?
I
They're
don't know
all
all of those people.
no, but they love you. And that's the thing. It's like you're not out there
Blew my
fishing.
mind.
You're not out there fishing for subs. You're not out there clickbaiting titles. That's just not what you're
Blew
here
my
for.
mind.
Yeah. And those are
Absolutely
600
blew my mind.
people that relate to you. And as much as I can get, and I've said this about my own channel, I have certain goals and I want to hit them and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm more interested in having more of a kind of like a cultivated community of
Yeah.
people that legitimately give a crap about each other than having
Oh,
hundreds
hell
of
yeah.
thousands of of subs that all argue with each other to death in the comments after every
Oh,
video, and then I got to go in and start kicking people out and all of that, because inevitably that's what happens. I mean, the channels get
you're right.
these big
Inevitably, that is what
channels.
happened.
um
Yeah.
you're going to run into some very strange people, but it is no surprise to me that 600 people
Strangeness is
gravitate.
welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that
Bring
you
me your
are
strange. Strange is
right.
okay.
There you go.
But I mean, I appreciate that. I do. And is very, very much what I'm very happy to say has happened for me here, in that it's rare that somebody new will come into a chat, but I will always acknowledge them and go,
Hmm.
hey, you haven't commented before, you know.
Hmm.
And it occurred to me that I know when that happens,
Right, because you recognize a
because I
name
know
you have never
my
seen.
friends in the chat, and that's a new person. Hi.
Yeah,
Very much
absolutely.
like when you're in a social situation and there's somebody that hasn't been there before, and perhaps they've been on the edge for a while,
Hmm.
just
Just
listening,
lurking.
you
Yeah.
know?
And I
And
mean,
when they poke their head into the conversation, you say, "You're allowed in this conversation. Come over
yeah,
here.
absolutely.
Hi.
Yeah.
Come
Nice to
and
meet
talk
you.
to
Here's
us."
all these other people. And if you think
Yeah.
about it, if you put 600 people in a room, that is a ton of
It's a
people.
lot of people.
And
It
we get
honestly, it
like
gave me
the
such a shock.
yeah, these numbers
Whoa.
that people throw out there. I got 10,000, 20,000. If you put 500 people into a room, okay,
That's a
my
lot of people.
club, according to the fire marshal, my club held 480 or 90 people. According to me, it held
Really? How many could it hold?
700 easily. I mean, not easily, but hey, it's got to sell some
Hey, you
drinks.
had to be friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Asses and to elbows, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, but I know what 600 people in a room looks like, and it's a
It's a lot of
ton
people.
of people. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And that's the joy of being part of the community, is that you meet people. Griffkin, who's in the chat, we found out not long ago that we hadn't subbed to each other's channels, which astonished the both of us, because we've
Yeah.
been in each other's circle for
Yeah.
what feels like forever. We talk to each other on Discord, we
Sure.
talk to each other in other people's streams. So for both of us to suddenly go, whoa, how am I not already subscribed to you?
Right.
That's weird, you know, because it's a community that we hang out, and I go into Discord at whatever time of day or night somebody's online.
Yeah. It's true.
I go in and I check the Hob threads, and I'll see what's happening in Dresden threads. And just the other day I've commented, and because I haven't heard from a person and I know they're coming up on something exciting.
That is so funny.
And I've got back, they're not quite there yet. I'm on chapter such and such, this is happening. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's exciting. Yep. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
That's emotional. Yep. And I'm still sitting here waiting. That's not what I was waiting for.
It's okay.
But, you know, being aware of people in this community is an absolute treasure, because as a reader and being so isolated in my reading for such a long time, it's still like a genuine uplift and a genuine kind of, I get to talk about my books.
Yep.
With people who give a shit.
Right.
They know it's just books. They know it's just writing on the page.
Yeah, but it's still fun.
But it's the gateway to these conversations where
That's
we
right.
get to talk about meaningful things. Okay, so what is this theme telling us about society? What is this storyline telling us? And that guy can write a sex scene. And
there you go. Jay
so
Kristoff.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that one's a bit he's thirsty, but he's not good at this. And I am talking GGK. He's not so good at the sex scenes. But
no, not at all.
His talents, he would stay away from there.
Yeah, his talents lie elsewhere. There's no doubt about it. But
or that he would go and read outside of his genre and see what works. So I'm very grateful to Jay Kristoff's wife. That made me laugh so much when he said that to Mike. I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Because I do read in that genre, and I go quite. I will follow paranormal fantasy into romance into holy crap, you're not normal. And so authors definitely have things they're good at. And there are authors in that really extreme place over there who can do a spicy scene, probably couldn't do something reasonably simple in just standard prose.
Right.
But yeah, they have the strengths.
They got some things. All right. I love it.
There are some authors closer to here who can do both. Those are marvelous. You know, you're like, they can do a spicy scene, and I care what's happening in the story.
I love
it. Kind of comes back. It's like, okay, this one, great story, some spice, good spice. Okay, good. Yeah, lovely. Every now and then one will stand out. And this is one of the authors I don't have physically anymore, Nalini Singh. I began reading her for the spice. I was like, it's pretty good spice. Yep, great. Got into about book 4 and I'm like, get on with it. I need to know what's happening. Because the story was strong and I wanted to know what was happening in the story. And it's like, okay. And it got to the point where that just wasn't the draw for me anymore in these books. It was there and it was good,
right?
But that wasn't the draw. The world was more important and the greater storylines were more important. And so for me, that was like, okay, this woman can write because I care.
That's very cool.
You know, so yeah, I am actually interested to know. Do you read far in that direction?
Not really.
Not really.
It's just, again, my TBR is so huge, and it's a lot of the, the ones that we've talked about with these big epic fantasy, epic sci-fi, space opera, classic sci-fi, and you just don't run into spice that way. You don't. I did read A Court of Thorn and Roses. Wasn't really my jam, but hey, it's okay. And I know there's plenty of stuff that's better, but just wanted to read it to know what it was. But
yeah,
anyway,
I tried to read Akatan. I struggled with that as well. So,
dearie,
it's not the best example.
I hope I'm not. I hope I won't be punished.
Oh my God, we've gone for over 2 hours.
But Jesus. I was gonna say, I have an appointment in like 15 minutes in a place that's like 10 minutes away from here. So but I was like, I don't want to cut very short. And I just looked at the live and I was like, okay, I'm not cutting it short. We've been on for
we've been going a long time.
Like almost 2.5 hours. So that's pretty damn good.
No,
don't be sorry. Are you kidding me? If I didn't have this appointment, if I didn't have this appointment, I could go another 2.5 hours with you.
Well, next time.
For sure.
But thank you so
5-hour marathon.
I've enjoyed your company tremendously. Have a wonderful day. Hope your appointment goes really well. And for those of you who are stuck with us in the chat, and yes, I'm talking to you, Farnall and Sal and Shadia. Mwah, love you. Brian, love your face. but we are
Thank you.
going to love you and leave you.
See you, everybody.